love you forever, forever. I wanna love you. Will you let me love you forever, forever and a day, 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 day.
Hey guys, welcome to 90 Days of Melanated Way. It's Friday, and as you guys know, we have been covering all things Geoffrey Paschel, from his trial to just all the things. And I wanted to introduce you to my special co-host, Shelby Bart. She runs The Truth About Paschel on Instagram, and her and I got to kind of, well, you know what it is, Shelby.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of like brought my attention to all of this. And I thought, because there's so many things swirling out there, that we definitely need to talk about the 2-day trial. We need to talk about the history of domestic abuse. And guys, in light of October being Domestic Violence Abuse Month, this conversation is much needed. And I know that we are all 90 Day Fiancé fans, and I think that it's absolutely important to not only talk about this, but to realize that there are so many people that are affected by this, and this has now touched our 90-day community, and I think it's important to talk about it. So Shelby, I wanted to start off with you and kind of just start from the beginning, because I know that you know a lot about this situation. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is, let's take it back to the beginning. So when Geoffrey's season of 90 Day Fiancé, before the 90 Day started, he was in a relationship with Kristen Wilson, who is the victim of DV in this case.
Yes.
Now, I want to just throw out the timeline so that everyone can understand that timeline. So back in June of 2019, the domestic violence incident happened that he has now been charged with. However, allegedly, there were prior DV incidences with ex-wives that he's had. So he's had 3 ex-wives. There's been some custody issues, and also some domestic violence allegations. Mm-hmm. Do you know anything about that?
First, let me just say that I'm not really set up for like interviews. So if I have 3 dogs, so if they bark, I apologize.
We love animals here, so it's not even an issue. Don't
worry. Great. So let's do the timeline. Let's do the timeline of 2019, and then we can do the timeline of when Geoffrey's on the show and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So from what we know from Geoffrey, per his season, per his Instagram, social media, all of that, is that he began talking to Varia 5 months before he went to Russia. He went to Russia mid-July of 2019. So that puts us in January of 2019. So in January of 2019, he goes on the Russian dating site and he meets Varia. When he does this, he has been in a relationship with Kristen Wilson Chapman for, I don't know exactly how long, but it was bordering on 3 years, I believe. If it wasn't 3 years. So while he's talking to Varia, he also, in March, asks Kristen Wilson Chapman to marry him. So he becomes engaged in March. June 9th of 2019, the assault takes place. July, I believe 16th, but I'm not going to say that in stone, of 2019, Geoffrey goes to Russia. So that's the 2019 timeline. And then, of course, you have November of 2019, Varia comes to America. Varia and Mary have that whole, bout outside his house. And then his season airs beginning of March 2020, was it?
Yeah.
Yes, because I started talking to him, which we're not here to talk about my relationship with him, but I started talking to him in the second episode of the season, which was March 15th.
Wait, Wait, what?
That's a whole nother interview. It's a whole other interview, Linda, and what has gone on with that and the legal things that he has tried to do to me as of a month ago. So, I mean, if we have time,
we have all the time. You just dropped a bomb.
I'll continue with the timeline and throw myself in there. How about that?
Okay, great.
So March, so 15th, hold on, I'm really bad at math. So March 6th, his season airs, I think, whatever that Sunday was of that week in 2020. March 5th, somewhere in between the first episode and the second episode, Geoffrey posts that COVID photo with, I don't know if you remember it, but it was like the first photo that like came out, and he was labeled a douche right from the start with that photo because he had a tower of toilet paper, he had a tower of Corona boxes, he had a cigar in his mouth, and his dog was on his foot, and it's boomerang, and he's like doing this.
Yeah.
So I message him on Instagram. I say, hey, funny photo, cute photo, something like that. And everything that I say, I have proof to back it up. It can be forensically analyzed to the top.
Yep.
I think I said like, hey, funny photo, cute photo, something like that. And he wrote back, hey. And, at that point, we don't know anything. I mean, he's just meeting Varia and all that kind of stuff. So nobody has a clue how it ended. And I don't remember exactly the exchange, but I say something along the lines of, I hope I'm not crossing any boundaries by reaching out, given I was in the wrong, but like, anyway. And he says, no, you're not crossing any boundaries. Like ... implying that I was crossing something. And so I think I said back, well, what am I crossing? And he said, hopefully just state lines. From there, we spoke every single day until I moved there.
Wait, what?
Oh yeah, girl. It's a whole thing. I visited him in Tennessee 4 times over the course of 2020. He came to Baltimore to my house one time. And that was actually, this is great. He was passing through Baltimore and he crashed at my house on his way to New York to pick up Varia when she moved to the US. Come to find out. Anyway, so yeah, let me just speed it up. I moved to Tennessee. Varia was there. We ended things. It got ugly. I got out of there. My level of like fear and anxiety after all this was like red line. Because I'm in like Maryville, Tennessee. I don't know anybody at this point. I was friends with Ashley, his best friend. I was friends with Mary at this point as well, and gone. And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I moved, and then he got on his Instagram, he got on with John Yates. I think it's still up there on his YouTube, but it's been redacted, my name, and doxed me completely as his stalker, who he's never met before, that I came out of nowhere, that initially I was a supporter, what he said, I was a supporter turned lover turned hater. And I just came out of nowhere, obsessed with him. I moved to Tennessee so I could stalk him even more. He doxed my mother. This live, and listen, I don't care at this point because I have nothing to hide. The live is still up on his Instagram. And in the caption, it says, let's talk about my stalker, Shelby Bart.
Shelby, I do interviews all the time. I have not ever I have not recently been so shocked and speechless in a long time. This goes, you know what they always say? It always goes deeper than just the surface. I don't know if you've heard that saying before.
It goes deeper than me. Much.
So I'm going to get to you, but I want to talk about the trial. And I want to talk about his history. And it's almost like, and this is just coming to my mind, it's not scientific, you guys, but it's almost like he is 100% a narcissistic personality in the sense that he, quote unquote, collects women. And why I say that is because the timeline, there's you, there's Mary, Kristen, and then his ex-wives, and it's all intertwined. And as you guys know, he's already been married and divorced 3 times. He has a bunch of children from various women. And it seems to me, from my understanding of the situation, is that he starts new relationships when he's already still in relationships. So that's why I say like collector of women. And so what I want us to do is start with the trial, and then we'll get into all the other stuff. Shelby, you've blown my mind. I'm regrouping.
I thought you knew this. I'm sorry.
I had no idea. I'm shook right now. Like, absolutely shook. And before we go any further, you guys, you see on the bottom of my screen, we are talking about a hot topic. The hotline.org. If anybody is in a desperate situation or is triggered by this, the hotline.org is where you can go. And I want to pop this up real quick just so that everyone can see it. So I went online and I researched it. It is a website that you can go to, and they'll help you 24 hours a day. You can call it 800-799-SAFE. They tell you how to delete it from your internet cache, and you can call, you can chat, whatever you need to do. So if you're in a situation where this is triggering something, because as you guys know, many people deal with this without actually speaking about it. So I wanted to throw that up there first and foremost. Okay, let's talk about the trial. Now, you actually sent me a message, and that's what brought my awareness to the trial actually starting. And I have interviews and shows that I do daily, and I literally stopped to cover this trial, and I want to talk to you about the trial. So the trial started a couple of days ago, and it started with 3 witnesses. And one of the witnesses being Kristen Wilson. And she shared her story on June 9th, 2019, about her situation with Geoffrey. Now, I'm going to go through, you guys, the timeline of it all, because I think it's important to know and remember. So this all aired on courttv.com. And Shelby, I don't think Geoffrey knew that it was going to be aired internationally. I don't think he knew that, because my first take watching it, with him keeping his face covered with the mask and no one else in the courtroom doing that, I think he was trying to hide the fact that he was actually in court for this. Now, as you guys may or may not know, because of COVID, the trial was originally set for October of 2020, but got pushed back because of COVID. Now, he knew about this trial. He knew that it was happening, and he knew that his dates were coming. Now, I want to pop up something that sarcasm.com posted, and I want to talk about this real quick too. So before the 90 days, Geoffrey Paschel calls Big Ed pervert and talks tell-all snub. He talks pending criminal case. He talks Mary and more. Now, one of the things, and I hope I have it as the next thing, it's not, so give me 1 second. One of the things that I know that he did know was that he was offered a plea deal, and then he decided to turn that plea deal down. Do you know anything about that?
Well, initially he was offered essentially a deal after it all happened, which was to plead guilty to, it was a much lesser charge, and have it on his record, but like no jail time. You know what I mean? Like, right, it was like, right. And he said, absolutely not. I'll go to the grand jury. Right. So that was one deal. Now, in 2020, he was offered a plea deal of 4 years, is what I recall him telling me. 4 years probation. There wasn't even, I don't believe, jail time involved, but the probation was very strict. It was very heavy. I recall him telling me that it involved therapy for the entire time. And he turned it down for multiple reasons. He turned it down because he wasn't going to admit guilt, because at that point, he was already in deep with his followers and all of that about his innocence, and that he had evidence that would exonerate him, and let's just get to trial and I will clear my name. And there was no way that Geoffrey was going to concede and admit any sort of guilt. And he went down to the very end fighting with his story. But so it was 4 years, and he turned it down and he said no. And at that point, his counsel informed him that they were seeking, at that point, he told me 10 to 12 years. Now, you can pull up the sentencing for each charge and find out that that's the minimum that he can do is 12, that he will do is 12. So I'm sure he was just obviously, again, trying to make it seem lesser than it was to me. But yeah, so that was the plea deal that he was offered back in 2020.
And so I'm pulling up what Sarcasm found online, an article, and I'll just read what it says. It says, quote from Geoffrey, "I have everything that I need to exonerate me," Geoffrey continues. "This is all just a ploy. This is all just an agenda to try to make me lose custody of my child." Geoffrey explains that when he was arrested in June, he was initially facing just a misdemeanor charge of domestic assault, which explains why he was able to leave the country and fly to Russia to film. Quote, "They tried to drop the charges, but the victim," Geoffrey uses air quotes, "didn't want to drop it, and she pressed forward. And then they offered me no punishment whatsoever, just to have it on my record. I said, quote, no, absolutely not." Geoffrey was told that if he didn't take the offer, that they would convene a grand jury and, quote, trump up the charges, as Geoffrey put it. "You do whatever the hell you want to do. I'm not accepting anything other than a full exoneration," Geoffrey says. He told the prosecutor. So that's what they did. If you're curious, the amended charges that Geoffrey is currently facing are aggravated kidnapping, domestic assault, interference with emergency call, and vandalism. So originally, according to this article, he could have been charged and had no jail time, could have gone on like he did to film in Russia, but he was like, nope, this is all a ploy. Whether, I don't know, Shelby, I don't know if it was just like he thought he was invincible. I don't know what it is, but we're here now.
So my take on it, and I'm not any sort of expert in anything, I think you were correct in that there is some form, extreme of narcissistic personality disorder. Absolutely. There's also sociopathic tendencies that he displays. That's what I believe, or what I view. I studied psychology in college, but I think that he, when someone like that is a pathological liar, pathological to the point that if you asked him what time it was, he would look at a watch and tell you a different time.
Yeah.
So when people like that tell their story, whatever their story is, their narrative, they repeat it and tell it so often, they begin to they take it on.
Yeah.
They begin to adapt it, embrace it. I mean, how convincing was he?
Yeah.
How convincing? I don't know if you followed any of his social media over the course of the 2 years, but I mean, he managed to manipulate a lot of people's minds, including mine. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So what we're looking at here is his first booking trial, and I kind of want to go through what Court TV did for day one. So day one was on the 6th of October. The prosecution rest after calling 3 witnesses. So they called the victim, and the victim, Kristen Wilson, is his ex-girlfriend / ex-fiance. And at the top of our show, we kind of went through the timeline, you guys, and just to refresh your memory, he was in a relationship with Kristen. During that relationship, they went from girlfriend to fiance. This was all in June. When this incident, domestic violence incident, happened, a month later, he went to film with Varia. So if you're backtracking, that means he had to have been, like Shelby said, in some type of relationship with Varia in order to all of a sudden be filming just months later, right? So I want you guys to keep that in the back of your mind. So he has a fiance. They break up after this domestic violence assault, and then he's off. And that is why, even in the court, even in the trial, Shelby, the prosecutor brought this up. She brought it up. She said, you were on 90 Day Fiance. And I'm paraphrasing, you guys. You were on 90 Day Fiance. You're this big reality star. You were in a relationship with Kristen, she says, and then you were able to film. And then she talks about how fans found out about these charges and they started a petition. And he acted like he didn't know anything about that. Is that what you saw as well?
So a lot of people have brought up, TLC needs to do better background checks and all that kind of stuff because they're wondering how he even got on the show.
Yeah.
And just really quickly to touch on that. So if you look at the timeline, it's a process to get approved for 90 Day Fiance. You have to apply, believe you have to be interviewed, all that kind of stuff. So at the time when the assault occurred, he had already been approved for 90 Day Fiance. He had already submitted his background. He had already gone through the screening, and this occurred after that. It had to have because he left a month later. Yep. Tickets already bought, like all of that kind of stuff. So he already knew he was going. So that's how he got on the show and got past them with this. And that's why after, when he was on the show and this came to light and the season was filmed and TLC chose that they were not going to cut his segments, but what they did instead was say, we are not going to film anything new with him. And that's why he wasn't at the tell-all, because that was new filming. Ask me your question one more time.
So, you asked. So I was saying that he acted like he didn't know anything about the petition that was against him as the season started to air.
Yes, he definitely didn't acknowledge it. I believe at some point he acknowledged it later, like in a roundabout kind of way, in some interview, maybe with Melanated. I don't know who it was, but yeah, I know about it, but like it didn't go anywhere. So again, in his mind, he's won. You know what I mean? Like, that petition won't touch me, forget about that. Moving on. Like nothing seemed to faze him. Because up until yesterday, no one's been able to really touch him, he strikes down anybody and everybody that posts about him, says anything about him, anything like that. So, he acted like he didn't know about it, and he acted like he didn't know about everything, including a trial.
Yeah, even on the trial, when he was being cross-examined, he kept saying, I don't recall. And I was sitting there like, what? I even recall. So when the prosecutor was talking to him about the videos that he did, because I remember he had a whole production that he did saying that he had all the evidence, that he had all the receipts about this is all just one conspiracy against him. And he did videos and they were on his YouTube. And then you're in court being cross-examined. You're saying you don't remember. 90 Day fandom is a huge fandom. Of course we remember, because you made it a big deal. And not only did you put it on your YouTube, you put it on your Instagram, and you have hundreds of thousands of followers. So how can you sit on a court of law and lie? It was mind-blowing to me. I was like, wait, but I remember.
I wasn't shocked, but I was streaming it live on the Truth About Paschel page, and the comments were flooded with, he just committed perjury. Like, he just committed, like, people were saying, like, knew he was lying, because, like you said, everybody remembers those interviews. And even the DA was like, you know, these interviews that he did, he's like, I don't know that I would call them interviews. And, you know, everything that she said, trying to introduce that evidence into the trial, he spun, you know what I mean? He spun it back on her. So yeah, you know, the things that you've posted on Instagram, you know, I didn't post anything. I don't remember posting any interviews.
Yeah.
Like he tried to trip her on every single thing that he could, you know, because on his YouTube, he would always repost screen recordings of whatever interview he was in. So that's factual. But he acted like, well, I don't know what other people post with me. Like, I have no control over that. I have no idea. So it was very frustrating to watch as someone and with other people that have seen all of these things and knew.
Shelby.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
First, I just want to shout out Dopey Dope. Thank you so much for the super chat. Patty originally said shocked after finding that interview with him. Yeah, you guys, I did interview Geoffrey, and I'm actually going to go look back at the interview. But I did interview him a couple of years ago when all of this was coming out, and he emphatically denied. He said the same thing that he's been saying over and over again, which is that he has the receipts that this is one just big conspiracy against him. And he was able to really charm us, make us doubt that all the things that we've heard about him were true. So, Patty, I absolutely remember that interview, and I'm going to absolutely have to go back and rewatch it. And perhaps I'll post it. I don't know. But right now, let's go back to the trial. So in the state's opening, Court TV says the prosecutor, Heather Good, described in detail the brutality of the fight between the couple, including the many times she claims the defendant banged her head into the stairs and the walls. Now, before I go forward again, you guys, I'm going to give this disclaimer. This could be triggering for some people. I understand the absolute seriousness of domestic violence. I went ahead and put that hotline.org. If you or anyone you know are in a situation, the hotline.org is where you can reach out to. It's 100% anonymous. It's 24/7 a day. So before I put these pictures up, before I put the victim's photo up, which I have not shared yet, and I know that it's all been on all Court TV, but because it was alleged, I was honoring that type of privacy. So with that being said, again, you know, trigger warning for anyone that's watching this that might be triggered by this. I'm about to talk about this, okay? So this is Kristen Wilson. This is when she took the stand. And when she took the stand, Kristen Wilson, again, in a relationship with Geoffrey for about 3 years. She talked a lot about the night that they went out, this June 9th of 2019. And if you guys have been following the trial, you know that she and Geoffrey had gone out. I don't remember, Kristen, do you remember the name of the restaurant? Something Brasserie.
The Brasserie.
The Brasserie. So they went out to the Brasserie. She had a friend that was working there. And so they were being served food and alcohol. Now, she said that she had a shrimp cocktail. He ordered burger and fries, and they decided to share that. And she was drinking champagne. He was drinking whiskey and Coke. And her telling of the events was that she stuck to champagne, and she had a few glasses of champagne. They were there for a few hours. Now, Geoffrey's lawyer tried to make it seem that they were there for 5 hours drinking nonstop. They were saying that she had champagne, she had vodka sodas or some type of vodka drink, and they hadn't had a lot to eat. And because they were over there drinking with her friends, serving them, he tried to insinuate that breaking laws as a server, the server was overpouring the amount of alcohol, so the drinks were stiffer than they should have been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then Kristen says, after a few hours, they decided to go home. They lived less than 5 minutes away from the brasserie. They went home, and she went to walk the dog, and she came back, and she was viciously assaulted. Now, you guys, I'm going to show the pictures of the assault. Now, this is the first one that they showed where her head has a huge knot. They talked about it being, Kristen, like a fist size, right?
Mhm.
So this is the knot on her head that they showed at the trial. Then they showed her inside of her lip, and she's explaining how he grabbed the back of her neck and was like hitting her head against the floor, hitting her head and dragging her across the room. They spoke of stairs. So I guess her house had like 3 stairs to the next level where the bedroom is, and 4 stairs.
Mhm.
4 stairs to where the bedroom location was. And as she was being dragged around her house, there were like light switches that were bloody. The staircase had blood drops, and she continued to be violently assaulted for about 30 minutes. Now, this photo is her back, right,
Mhm.
Shelby? And so you see the bruising on her back in this photo.
It's kind of hard to see, but each one of her vertebrae
Yeah.
were bruised, as well as her back and the back of her neck.
Yeah.
Here.
Now, this I just took a screenshot of was as the prosecutor was deposing Kristen, the cameraman shot to Geoffrey's response. So this was his kind of response in the moment. What is your take of what I've said so far, Shelby?
I mean, completely accurate. That's the back of her neck.
That's the back of her neck, right?
Mhm.
And to me, and I'm not an expert, right? But to me, if someone is grabbing the back of your neck, Kristen, like this, those 3 dots look like finger marks to me.
Yeah.
Right? And so to me, when I was watching the trial, it's like, how is he trying to explain that all of these things happened from her just falling, and that she was so pissed drunk that she just fell all over the place? Because I've had bruises. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I've had bruises, and I know what like bruises look like. And so this to me, and again, I'm not an expert, you guys, but this to me looks like someone grabbed the back of your neck like this and left 1, 2, 3 of your dominant hand's fingers bruises on your neck. So you can imagine how hard he was grabbing her. What are your thoughts?
I agree with that as well. And I've been in a domestic violent relationship before.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've had the back of my neck grabbed and my hair and all that stuff. And that's exactly what I thought when I saw those was, and Kristen has very long, thick hair.
Yep.
So he was grabbing he had to have been, I mean, I would assume he had to have been grasping, over and over and over again and holding a good grip in order to, bash her head on the floor. And I've also had bruising as well, falling and from other things. And to bruise like that quickly, it's got to be forceful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in this photo, it's not as clear, you guys, but this photo is her showing, after the fact, some blood marks that are on her carpet. And then again, she shows, this is the wall to the staircase that we were talking about, up to the bedroom. You see blood splatter on the wall. And then here, this one just broke my heart, Kristen, where if you guys didn't watch the trial, she was explaining how after the attack, he forced her to go to the bathroom and blow her nose and wash her face, but he wouldn't let her turn the lights on. So you can imagine her reaching for the lights here, the light switch here, and blood Oh, it's so sad. I feel like I'm about to cry. The blood being on the light switch.
These pictures really painted the scene of like terror. I mean, we know that she blacked out multiple different times and came to in different places in the house. Like you said, we know that when it was all over and done with, he put her on the couch and her face was pouring blood. So he told her to go clean up and in the bathroom, but he wouldn't let her turn the light on so she couldn't see her face. And so she had to wash, wipe off, put water on her face in the dark. And he told her to blow her nose to get the blood out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we're up till this point. And I mean, like you said, his story, his defense was that this, what did they keep calling it? A pump knot?
Yeah, pump knot. Yep.
Okay, so this pump knot on her forehead was caused by one encounter with the door frame. Again, I'm no expert either, but whenever I have had, even full speed, had a connection with a wall, a pole, a this or that, you have like a mark and a raise. This, you could tell, was caused by repeated trauma to her forehead. That's my opinion. I mean, right when I saw it, I was like, that's not that I ever believed his defense.
Yeah.
But I mean, the pictures, it's true what they say. A picture, speaks 1,000 words because those are severe, graphic.
Very graphic. Now, this photo is from a few days later, where the swelling has started to develop more. And again, this one broke my heart as well, right? Her whole forehead, you guys, her whole forehead. And what I'm going to do is show you her again. And then you guys can see. So look at her forehead now, as opposed to the forehead that we just saw. It was like this. Shelby, it was like this big out of her face.
It was truly, I mean, honestly, unbelievable. Like I said, the story that he's been telling, and if you read the police report, it does not do the situation, the assault, justice at all, because it says, from the police that she, displayed signs of a concussion. Well, a concussion is such a broad umbrella term. And I mean, football players get concussions all the time and they have no, they don't have any visible signs of it. So your imagination can run wild. And if you have one person telling their side of the story in the narrative and painting a picture that, well, she hit her head on a door and she had, a bump. And that's what we're all thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And then they go ahead and throw the first picture up, which is the front facing of her face.
Yeah.
I was knocked off my feet, literally, because I was not expecting that at all. At all. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, I want to get through some of these photos too, because I want to talk about what he said happened. And I'm going to let you tell that side. But so here we see the knot on her forehead. And then again, a closer look at the bruising on the back of her neck, where she talked about being grabbed and again, forced down and slammed to the ground and slammed against the wall. And then this is her face, you guys, the bruising on her face, under her eyes. Her whole eyes seem to have swollen shut, you guys. And here's a closer photo. Like, it just was horrendous. 30 minutes of, I'm sure, absolute terror, absolute not understanding. Like, Shelby, this is someone that she was going to spend the rest of her life with. It's
So she said in the trial that there had been prior incidents of abuse. This is alleged, at this point, because it hasn't been, proven. But it's, a lot of people will possibly judge her, like, why did she stay after all of this and all of that? And I don't know how severe the other assaults were, but this, so first off, there's betrayal, like you were discussing. The betrayal of this on somebody, it's awful, because when you're in it, when it's happening, your brain is thinking, what's happening? Why is he doing this to me? He's going to kill me. I'm going to die, this, that, and the other. It's pure terror the entire time. And that's what those photos and what the house looked like was pure terror. And the neighbor painted the picture of it being, this, Kristen banging on her door and her being down the hallway, and then them hiding behind, a wall in case Geoffrey came to the door. And then when the police banged on the door, they wouldn't even open the door right away for the police. Like, think about, and this is what the DA said, like, think about how afraid you have to be, even if you've called the police and they're banging on the door and saying, it's the police, and you still don't know. That's sheer terror.
So let's take it back there a little bit again for people that missed the trial. So after they showed these photos, Kristen talked about how she was able to escape the house. So we talked about how he made her blow her nose, wash her face, and then he made her go to bed. And she lied down beside him and she pretended to be asleep. And she could hear, with her eyes closed, him lying beside her, being on his computer. And she said that she heard like a USB cord go in. She opened her eyes a little bit to see what was going on, and she could see that her phone was being plugged into her computer. What she didn't know at the time, but realized after, was that he was deleting all the correspondence between them. He was deleting photos and text messages between the two of them. And she continued to pretend that she was asleep until she mustered up the courage to get out of the bed, because she thought at that moment that he was sleeping. She left the house and ran to the neighbor's house. And that was the second or first. She was actually the first witness. And that witness talked about getting this door knock in the middle of the night with her neighbor. And she talked about what she saw. And like you said, how they hid, they phoned the police. Now, Kristen was not able to phone the police on her own because guess what? He took away her phone. So there was no phone, there was no computer. All she could do was run at that moment. And that's how she ended up at the neighbor's house, who was also a witness on the stand. The third witness of the first day was the police officer. And the police officer, that testimony, Shelby, correct me if I'm wrong, but he basically wanted to say that when they went in, Geoffrey was still at her house. And I showed the footage, you guys. So if you want to take a look at the body cam footage, go ahead and go to 90 Day the Melanated Way. It's all there. But when the police came in, they questioned him. You can't really hear the audio, but he's basically already giving excuses before they asked any questions, saying like she was drunk, she was falling over. He shows where he said that she hit her head against this door. They went up some stairs. Go ahead.
Well, no, when the police came, and this was actually part of the state's closing argument, is that he actually took them to the wall and said it all happened right here. Because that was part of the DA's closing, is that at the time when the police came in, he says it all happens at a wall. He never mentions the door. But now we're at trial, and it all of a sudden there's this door frame that comes into play. So yes, the audio was terrible on both body cams, the one inside the neighbor's house with Kristen and the one of them going into Kristen's house where Geoffrey is. So you couldn't really hear much of what they were saying, but I mean, you can see they come in and it's the footage, I'm sure, is everywhere. Geoffrey doesn't have a shirt on. He's wearing jeans. You can kind of tell that I thought he kind of seemed a little drunk to me, intoxicated. And if anything, you can see, and knowing Geoffrey, and forget the fact that I personally know him, knowing him from his social media, you can kind of see him doing his thing. And body language kind of speaks. So yeah, you can just see him already
trying to kind of charm the police officers to believe his way.
Yes.
Okay, so again, the police officer is on the stand. He tries to say that when they inspected Geoffrey, they saw scratch marks, but the scratch marks looked self-inflicted because they came down like this and he showed like this. Now, I believe at that point that was overruled. Like, he wasn't allowed to say that. He was only allowed to say, like, hey, what did the scratches look like?
Yeah. So he kind of started to say, to me, it looked like they were self-inflicted. And he got that out. And the defense objected. And they were correct in their objection because the police officer is not an expert witness as far as that, forensic analysis of scratch marks and all that kind of stuff. Maybe he's experienced a lot, but he wasn't on the stand as an expert witness. So he said that, and then the judge had to tell the jury to strike it from their mind. You never heard it. Don't consider it in your, deliberations. Which I always find that to be a strange kind of process, like, don't forget you ever heard it.
Yeah.
Who's going to forget they heard something like that? And later in the trial, something else came out and they were tasked with not, striking it from their mind. But
yeah, we're going to talk about day 2 after. So
yeah.
Do you think that we've covered everything from day 1?
Well, the cross-examination on all of them, I don't remember anything like remarkable about the defense crossing the neighbor. When the defense crossed Kristen, he tried to trip her up and get her to say that he was very focused on the time 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like, it was repeated over and over again. He kept pushing that at Kristen. So you were there from 6:15 to 11 o'clock because the assault took place at 11 or right before 11 and you lived minutes away.
Yeah.
And Kristen held her own and kept saying, we were there for a few hours. I don't feel comfortable saying 5.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, well, logically, essentially, if you got there around 6:15 and the assault took place around 11, he kept going, and Kristen didn't waver. And then he also tried to get Kristen to say that her friend was overpouring their drinks because, your friend's serving you. I mean, I get that it's the defense's job to do what he did. And, a lot of people were very upset because he was victim blaming. He was, very aggressive with Kristen. And given he was super aggressive. Like, right when he came out, I was like, not surprised at all that he was Geoffrey's attorney. And then he tried to get Kristen to say that they were, overpouring drinks. And Kristen held her own again and said, well, I was drinking champagne. So you can't really make that stronger.
Yeah, because
that was like my favorite line of the trial.
Yeah, he was trying to imply that she was drinking vodka with something else. And that they were nonstop drinking throughout 5 hours.
For 5 hours.
And not have eaten anything besides the shrimp cocktail and the burger and fries that they both shared. Yeah. So he was trying to make it seem that she was pissed drunk. And then, I don't know if you caught this as well, but then he tried to imply that it was her fault that her and Geoffrey drove home. And that whole implication. Mm-hmm. So that's day 1. Day 2, I felt, was the explosive day where Geoffrey took this trial or took the stand. Mm-hmm. And his version of what happened that night was that same thing. They went out to the brasserie. They were drinking. He says that she was drinking champagne and vodka and whatever.
Champagne. She had a martini, and then she started with vodka and soda water.
Yeah. And then he said that he ordered the burger and fries, and that they were there for this 5 hours that his attorney kept talking about. And that, yes, they drove home, and, you know, they were thought about calling an Uber or ride share, whatever. They thought about getting a ride home from her friend that was the server, but they didn't want to wait. So because they live close to home, they decided to go home. Right? Now, they were supposed to go out again after that, right? So in Kristen's version, she went to walk the dog and she was texting her friend saying, "We're on the way." In Geoffrey's version on day 2, he said that he walked the dog because she wanted to like freshen up or change before they went out.
Spruce up a little.
And so he walked the dog, and then he went into a lot of detail of like where she lived. Sounded like it was on a hill, and he walked up the hill, he walked down the hill. It was like a cul-de-sac, and in his mind, she was watching him walk her dog, that he said he did often. And at that time, he said that he was on the phone with his son because he has his own animals that tend to like get out of his gate. And he wanted to make sure that everything was okay at home, he said, right? Mm-hmm. And that his son, he was talking to his son, and he wanted to make sure the son was taking care of his dogs. He says he walks back into the house and she lost it. She was in this crazy, drunken rage because she was so jealous that he was talking to someone, and she thought he was cheating, all of the things, and that she came into his, quote, personal space, and that he had to continue to push her away. And in all of that, in her jealous, drunken rage, she bumped into a door, she bumped into a wall, she fell on the floor, all the things, and that's how she got the injuries. Is that how you remember day 2 being?
I remember Geoffrey getting up in the stand, and I agree with what you said about wearing the mask, because that was noticed by everyone. Only him and the court reporter had masks on in the room. Yep. And I agree that he had it on, which is convenient because of COVID, to hide any sort of reaction on his face. And during the first day, when they panned over to him, I don't know if you remember this or saw this, but at one point he had a pen in his hand.
Yep, I saw that.
And was just
clicking on it. Yep.
Clicking away. And I thought to myself, and I even said it on my live, like, that doesn't look good. You know, that looks anxious and nervous. But anyway, so he gets up on the stand, and I remember his attorney opens with, "Tell me about your children. You know, tell me about your children." And so Geoffrey starts. He mentions, I believe, 3 of his children. Completely leaves out his 14-year-old, who's been very prominent on his social media and everything. Says that his oldest son just got married in May. And in fact, they're having a baby. She's about 2 months along. Paints this picture of, the loving father. Then he asks him about his degrees. And I don't even remember what Geoffrey said he has degrees in. I know he has, a degree in like bugs or something. I don't know what it is. Painting this picture of this well-rounded guy. And that's what, Geoffrey said happened is exactly what you said. And Geoffrey was implying that, he's this guy who loves animals. Everything that he did was intentional in creating a narrative about him, even down to the color of the suit that he wore. Mm. He wore a light colored suit, which I thought made him actually look larger, like in size. And it was very tight on him. I don't know if you noticed that. Like he was kind of busting out of it. Like you could see his arms and his muscles and all of that. But, a white suit to look light, to look pure, white is associated with being pure. He had a powder pink tie on, satin tie. So he painted the picture, that he's this loving father, educated man, loves animals. Not only is he walking the dog, but at 11 o'clock at night, he's so concerned about his dogs. He's calling his son to make sure that they're still there. This is a man that leaves his dogs for over a week at a time because they live outside. So he always just has somebody come over and just feed them once in the morning and make sure they have water in their bowls. Like I was heavily annoyed when he went into that narrative about walking her dog and checking on his dogs, because I know firsthand he loves his dogs, but like, not like I love my dogs. And I'm not saying that in like that kind of way, but like they live outside. He feeds them once a day outside. You're not allowed. They're so smelly and dirty that I wasn't ever allowed to touch them. If I touched them, I had to wash my hands immediately when I came in the house. If anything on my body touched them, I had to shower. So like they were his guard dogs. That's why he had them. They were huge, Russian, mountain dog, like these big, huge dogs that hated other dogs. But anyway, that was his narrative. And that was the picture he was painting, that he was this wholesome man. And Kristen is this drunken, jealous, rageful alcoholic who's mentally unstable. And she just, he just happened to walk right in front of the window and he's on the phone, and Kristen just happens to be in the house right by the window at the same time and catches him outside on the phone with his son checking on his dogs. But this lunatic woman assumes he's on the phone with another woman, and he steps through the door and she attacks him. And originally he says she hit her head on the door, and I don't even know that he said anything else. And later, I don't know if you caught this, later in his cross-examination, the state, says, well, there was blood on the wall. And Geoffrey, I don't know verbatim, but he literally goes, oh, yeah, she threw herself into the wall too. Like adapting that part because he forgot that part in the beginning. So up until that point, that's his version of events. And then, his defense says to him, well, did you get in the car and leave? Did you run? And he said, no. And I don't know if you caught this too, but Geoffrey says, and this is verbatim, he says, no, I had no reason to leave. I hadn't done anything wrong up until that point. Now, nobody caught that, but I
did catch it. He actually said I hadn't done anything wrong yet.
He might have said that at first, but at one point he says, up until that point. I was watching the replay and I was like, how did nobody grab onto that? But I mean, there was a lot of Freudian slips that I heard, that I caught on to, and I have to believe that the jury did as well. So so that's his series, his version of events that took place. And then the police came and he was unjustly arrested, for this. And, they didn't go into what happened after the arrest because the vandalism charge was dropped in June. And that stemmed from this story that we've all heard. And again, it's all alleged because no body camera footage was released. We didn't see anything with this. That he was arrested, the vandalism charge stemmed from him trying to kick out the window of the police car when he was arrested. And then we're told that he had to be taken out of the car and essentially hogtied with handcuffs, which is a 4-way restraint. Your arms behind your back, your feet are handcuffed, and then they bring them together behind you. And essentially the police lift you up by your hands, lay you in the back seat on your stomach, and you are restrained. You cannot move. But in January, they dropped that charge because
this is a huge thing, Shelby.
Oh, yeah.
It's a huge thing.
Yes. Oh my God. Huge. I mean, we heard that narrative, and that's what I think kind of put a lot of doubt and question in people's minds. You hear this, that he's essentially losing it after he's arrested and he's going psychotic. I mean, I don't want to label it, but so The charge was dropped in June because he didn't actually kick the window out of the car. He tried, but he didn't succeed. So they dropped that charge because, first off, it was the lowest charge that he had. And it was really kind of irrelevant to the rest of everything. So they dropped it. And at that point, I don't know if anybody, probably nobody read this article, but they dropped it and nothing was covered about it because nobody knew this this hearing was happening. And Geoffrey actually went to one of his followers who writes for, I forget what some site.
Yep.
And she writes this article, and I read it, when it came out. And so she writes this article that essentially is all about this vandalism charge being dropped. And in the article, she says, from a direct source in the courtroom. Well, at this time, I have a relationship with Kristen, and I'm aware that in the courtroom was only Kristen, the DA, Geoffrey, and his defense team. So who could have been the source that was in the courtroom? Kristen didn't talk to anybody. The lawyers certainly weren't talking to anybody. Oh, the judge was there too. The judge was, and the direct quotes that were in there were from Geoffrey, and they were not what happened. Again, I can't prove what I was told happened in that hearing, but in that hearing, his social media was brought into play. Essentially, the DA was trying to show that he has changed his story a bunch of times, that he's said on it like he didn't do it, like all that kind of establishing that he's a liar. And at one point, I was told that they were reading off like previous charges of his that he had, or arrests, or all that kind of stuff. And at one point, they were reading something that was about violence against a woman, and Geoffrey laughs, and the judge, reamed him out.
Yeah.
So anyway, the vandalism charge was dropped because of that. So they couldn't bring it up. I believe they tried to at one point. I believe the DA asked him something along the lines, or asked the officer something along the lines of that, and the defense objected that, it couldn't be brought in.
Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about day 2 was the text messages. These text messages that he received after this June of 2019 domestic abuse situation. So, in a nutshell, Geoffrey said that Kristen continued to reach out to him via text message. And again, with what you said, trying to paint the picture that he's this loving guy who loves animals, who is a great dad. And he started with this, in my opinion, weird squirrel rescue. He rescued a squirrel, and she wanted to help him nurture this squirrel back to. It was like, I was like, what are we talking about? He had totally lost me in that, but he started talking about that, and then his lawyer continued to talk about the text message. And I don't remember all the text messages, but basically the gist of it, you guys, and Shelby, you can jump in if you remember anything, but the gist of it was she kept reaching out because there was a restraining order intact at that point. He decided that he was not ever going to return any of her texts, but he made it seem like she was escalating. So he was saying, that she said that it had gotten too far at this point, but she can't take it back now. And then later, a month later, or a week later, or I don't know, however long, some time came in between them, that text and the next text, where she said, stop acting like you're better than me. And because you're ignoring me, I'm going all the way with this. And so he was painting the narrative that she was framing him, and this was all BS. And then he literally said this, Shelby, that I was like, wait, what? When he said that she said, if you treated me better, if you took care of me, basically none of this would happen. I was like, what the? Listen, I don't want to start cussing my face out, but like, what are you talking about? So are you trying to tell me that in a text message, this woman would not have said that she got her ass beat if, you would have taken care of me? She's a, listen, you guys, I don't know her. Shelby does know her, but I don't know her. But I'll say this, from what I learned at the trial, she's a teacher. She works with children. She owns her own home. So I'm not sure exactly what that was even supposed to mean, except that, hey, I'm this great guy, a businessman, real estate, whatever, and I have the ability to take care of, you know what I mean, Shelby? I was so kind of disgusted by that.
So with the text messages, and before they were ever brought into trial, they had the jury leave, and they had I guess it's called a proffer over it. And essentially Geoffrey testified, and so did Kristen, to the text messages. And it was questionable to have them be brought into evidence and be admissible, because all that they had was a screenshot of the text message screen, iMessage screen from his iPhone, which had her name at the top, with these
emoji,
I heart emoji face, because he's so loving and all that. And
Wait, before you, don't lose your thought, but I wanted to also say that it's interesting that he was saying how lovey he was, when in that same breath he was saying that he was trying to break it off with her, and that's why she was so jealous. And then also, you guys, I also want you guys to remember that while he's engaged to Kristen, he is talking to Varia, and shortly after leaves for Russia to film 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days. So this lovey Kristen thing, what? Go on. Sorry, I hope I didn't lose your train of thought.
No. He's talking to Varia, he's engaged to Kristen, and he's still married to his current wife. I just wanted to...
Oh, and let's not throw in you, because we're going to get to you separately. You're in the mix of that I'm still shook about, Shelby. I'm shook.
I'm shook too. But so the text messages.
Yeah.
So inevitably, the judge rules they can be brought in and they're admissible. And so these text messages that he alleges that he has from Kristen, so in the screenshot, he's describing the screenshot. And at the top of the screen, you can see the bottom of when you send an iMessage with a hyperlink to a website, generally it produces like a preview of what the website is. So essentially you can see the bottom of that. And it's this website on how to nurse. I forget what he said was wrong with the squirrel, but how to render aid to a squirrel in a certain situation that Kristen had sent him, because, there was this squirrel that... Anyway, the squirrel became like the star of the trial. I mean, everybody's talking about the squirrel.
It was weird. It
was weird. The squirrel was emphasized a lot. And I
almost feel, sorry, Shelby, I almost feel like he was doing that because in his mind, he was thinking about what the story was going to be as he moved forward with these text messages, or trying to remember what he has been saying all these years, so that he got his story straight. Because focusing on this weird squirrel situation that he's rescuing and trying to paint a picture that he's this big animal lover was very manipulative, in my opinion.
It was very, and everyone's kind of compared him to this, but it was very Ted Bundy. Very, just Ted Bundy. Go watch any of his trials or anything. It was very calculated. And what I felt like was every time he went back to the squirrel, it was kind of like rebooting the story and starting with the squirrel. And that was kind of his starting point. And then he could trickle down from there. Mm-hmm. And so the text messages had this link for the squirrel, because, he's going to start off again as this guy who saves animals. And it's, he asked her for help, whatever. So, and that message came from Kristen, allegedly, about the squirrel. And then nothing. And then it says, Kristen stopped sharing her location. And then below that, it says, you stopped sharing your location with Kristen, because supposedly those two things happened. And I actually kind of believe that did happen. I'm sure when Kristen got a new number, it stops. I don't know how iPhones work. But anyway, the text messages were all staged in timing with events that took place with this charge. So the initial text message from her is right after his birthday. It's a happy birthday message. Happy birthday. I miss you. Whatever. So there's that. Then he's indicted by the grand jury. And the text from her is, something, and I could be lost, but these are the text messages. So then there's one that says, all you had to do was answer me. Now, pardon my language, now you're fucked. Mm-hmm. And that was supposedly after the grand jury indicted him. So it looks like she's, set him up.
Yep.
And, that fatal attraction, single white female, all you had to do was answer me.
Yep.
And this wouldn't have happened. Now I've got you. And then there was a message, go ahead and delete all the photos and messages. I'll tell the truth.
Yeah.
So again, painting her as, this crazy woman.
Yeah.
And the last one is, all you had to do is take care of me. Now I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you lose custody of Caven.
Yeah.
Who's his 5-year-old son. And that text message speaks to his storyline of, which he then adapted later. So first it's she's jealous, and then it turns into she's jealous. And they only brought this up, and he only got screwed with this because of his social media, because he made that video that you said in the beginning, the women, the allegations. And in that he says nothing about jealousy. He says Kristen has done this in collusion with his current wife, Brittany, mother of his son, Caven, and Chasm, who passed away, in order to help her get custody of Caven or win custody. Now, it's so important to note, and I said this on my live, is that if anybody recalls and remembers Geoffrey's story with every woman that has ever been in his life, and his defense or explanation for any allegation that was made against him. If you remember, an ex-wife alleged that he repeatedly raped her during their marriage. In the police report, it says that Kristen said that he had done this previously to her 4 separate times in 2018. So he explained away all of that by that these women that he dated, when he broke up with them, they all decided that they were going to get him back. And not only were they going to get him back, but these women sought out exes of Geoffrey that were mothers of his children, and they lent themselves to them and said, I will fall on the sword for you in order for you to get custody of your child. Now, again, at the time, I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking, well, women can do this and whatever. But now, so you mean to tell me that every woman in Geoffrey's life who they don't know each other, supposedly meet later, but at the times he's breaking up with them, have no clue about each other. Every woman in his life had the same idea. I'm going to get him back. I'm going to stage something to screw him. I'm going to accuse him of, this horrible, vicious, violent sexual crime and this, that, and the other. All these women just happen to have this same idea. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, listen, hey.
The way he painted it out to be was there's this big, all of his exes had this big conspiracy against him because he's so great that they can't get past him. And so they're going to be vengeful. And just like Kristen, be so vengeful that they're out for him. That was the picture that he was painting. I want to pause here real quick. You guys, I know that we're talking about a very hard issue. I popped the hotline.org. If you know anyone that's in a domestic violence situation, the hotline.org is 24/7. I know that this could be triggering. Just know that it's fully anonymous. There are resources available to you. I also wanted to shout out Patty. Patty, thank you so much for the super chat. She says, thank you for speaking out for our safety. I want to also extend that to you, Shelby, because you are giving us some inside information that I didn't even know about. And again, I'm still shook with the fact that you were actually in a relationship with him during all of this. And don't think that we're not going to talk about that, because I think that that's important as well. Now, back to these text messages. One of the things that I found interesting, and it's also important to note in all that you've told us thus far, is the fact that he kept saying that he changed phones often, and that his original phone didn't have a lot of memory, so he would often delete immediately the text messages exchanges between him and Kristen because he needed the memory on his phone. But what he didn't say, and I thought, was it's amazing, Geoffrey, that you had the foresight to, every time you text somebody, go ahead and take a screenshot of that text. Screenshot, delete. Screenshot, delete. Now, why would you do that? Why would you do that? I'm just throwing that out there. And it's rhetorical. Why would you do that? And not only are you screenshotting only the important things, like Shelby said, you guys, the timeline of these text messages that he was talking about during the trial all coincided to court dates or important situations that were happening during these charges. So you're not responding. Okay, I'm going to take it more seriously. And guess what? We got to go to court for this. You should have taken care of me. And in response, there's a text message to that. So going throughout that. However, no original phone, because he said that he continued to change phones as well. So not only did he have a small phone with small memory, so he had to delete the text messages, but he kept changing phones. He kept upgrading during this time frame. And so it's all very important with the backdrop of what Kristen was saying when she was on trial the first day, and how when she was lying in the bed beside him, scared to death, and popping open one of her eyes to see what he was doing, and he was backing up her phone. And here's what was crazy to me, is the fact that his attorney acted like he didn't know what iPhones do. Anyone that's in the iPhone world, you guys know that when you back up your phone, it goes to the latest backup, right? So when she talked about backing up the phone and everything being updated, he was like, well, you have iCloud, right? So in your iCloud, everything should be stored there, right? Well, do you know what backup means? It means that it backs up to the latest version of what's on your phone. But they made her seem like she was telling a lie. And I am here to say, anyone with an iPhone, you guys know how backups work. And so the phone became her phone and his phone became central issues in this trial. Shelby, would you agree with that as well?
Yes. And with the text messages, when Kristen testified, she had no idea that these text messages were going to be brought in as the defense. Mm-hmm. So her narrative, at that time it was a narrative, now it is, he's been convicted, so it's fact. She says he plugs her phone into the computer. So again, she doesn't know that he's going to bring this in. So it's not, she didn't say that as, well, let me just explain away these, text messages. So I found that, very interesting as well. And I also found it interesting. I feel like the defense, and again, it's a strategy, was dragging everything out, every detail. Well, how did you take the screenshot? Well, I pushed, at that time, whatever iPhone he had, it has the home button, and you push it. So I pushed the home button, and I pushed the side button, like explaining how you take a screenshot on an iPhone.
Yeah.
Irrelevant. And I feel like the defense was trying to bring in technical stuff to trip up the jury or make the jury doubt, well, if you know, the iCloud question. And Kristen isn't a phone expert, doesn't, know all this stuff. And he's asking her, well, if in fact you back it up, doesn't it show up, wherever? And she's like, I don't know. No, I don't know. So, the squirrel was mentioned a lot. The taking the screenshot was mentioned a lot. The fact that, they said, had you ever reached out to her? No. Well, did you respond to any of these text messages? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Like,
Yep.
I know better. No.
I know better. I would never.
Oh, she's the bad one.
She's crazy. She's out to get me, and I didn't want anything to go wrong. Patty and Austin, Shelby wants to say thank you. I saw you in the lives recently. You held your own so well. So I do want to say that. Now I want to get back to the trial day 2 because again, this is important. So we go through the text messages and what he says and his version of events. He gets off the stand and she's recalled. Kristen is recalled to the stand just to kind of talk about what Geoffrey just talked about. So they mention the text messages and then they mention the text messages become big at this point, Shelby, because we're talking about the pictures, we're talking about the text exchange and why they're not showing up on her phone. She gave the reason, like, he deleted all of this stuff. He deleted the text messages. He deleted our social media. And then she says, which is really important, you guys, that he deleted some pictures, not all pictures. And then there's a pause. And then she says, I don't know if I can say this, but he also deleted a picture of a prior mark on her arm. This is where I personally was like, oh no! Court TV analysts and lawyers were going crazy over it. His lawyer took 1 second and stood up and objected. They did a sidebar and then they escorted the jury out because at this point, there was a potential mistrial. And the reason that there was going to be a potential mistrial is that the judge has to rule that you are allowed to, and it be admissible, prior bad acts. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if the judge had already ruled and said no, or if this was not coming up, because my understanding from what his attorney was saying about this 4B, 401, whatever it was called, 4 something, was that he was not made aware that this 4 whatever was going to be coming into evidence. And therefore, he was not going to be able to talk about it. And so a mistrial should be granted because he's trying to give Geoffrey the best possible defense that he can have. And you are not allowed to admit prior bad acts without the judge saying, yes, this is possible. So the Geoffrey's lawyer was pissed, and he was like, I can't effectively defend my client. I am looking out for his rights. All the things he was saying. And he indeed wanted a mistrial. Now, when I was watching Court TV, the analysts and lawyers were saying this is going to be a mistrial. This has to be a mistrial. If it's not a mistrial, then he has grounds for appeal immediately because of this prior bad act. Now, I don't remember, Shelby, what the word was, but the prosecutor said, well, you can just give a directive and basically tell the jury to disregard. And it's called something specific. I don't remember what it's called.
I on my live earlier, I was like, what's that called? I can't remember that word either. So yes, they call Kristen back up. And at first the state asks her, did you willingly submit your phone for forensic analysis? Mm-hmm. She said, yes. Were you willing and did you ask for the cell phone carriers to be subpoenaed in order to, validate any messages or anything? She said yes. From what I understand from an interview with Heather Good, who is the prosecutor, later, is that, cell phone carriers, and especially Apple, they do not cooperate well with, especially requests for phone records like this. I forget what a past case of what it was, but there was, an individual who had been murdered and her cell phone was locked, and they subpoenaed Apple to unlock it, because if you put a passcode on an iPhone, nobody can unlock that, especially if you lock it or whatever, nobody can get in there unless you subpoena Apple to scramble it, and they enter 1,000 different passcodes. So they couldn't validate the messages, although I believe they did validate that they did not come from Kristen, but they couldn't prove where they came from. And what the DA said was that she submitted her phone and they went through her entire phone. Right. And these messages never
appeared,
showed up. They weren't anywhere. And you would expect that if she had sent them, they would be somewhere. She had her entire conversation. She had everything.
Yeah. So there was a forensic, sorry to cut you off. There was a forensic analysis done on her phone. And I want to also take it back, because I really, guys, want you to think about this as a possibility. When I talked about Geoffrey specifically mentioning his phone in the storage and having to switch phones all the time and taking screenshots, having the wherewithal to take screenshots all the way. And then the prosecutor saying, hey, listen, we didn't get these screenshots until 2020, when, this is from 2019. All of a sudden, there are these new screenshots. And like you said, these new screenshots correspond to court dates and major events along with these charges.
And major events that have already taken place by the time this screenshot of these text messages is, shown. All of a sudden, almost a year later, Geoffrey has, wait a minute. I have all these texts. I have all these texts from Kristen. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Here you go. This is, and every text message, she essentially, if in fact she had sent these, handed him his defense.
Absolutely.
In a tiny, a bow package. That's what he wanted us to believe.
Yeah.
That Kristen just
admitted that she was setting him up.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the proof. She sent it to me that this is all a sham, and she's setting him up for this.
Yes.
So that all happens. The judges.
So the mistrial. So Kristen says that, and right. So the defense is essentially saying that he hasn't had a chance to properly investigate this claim. He hasn't had a chance to properly prepare a defense for it.
Yes,
he hasn't.
And Auntie's advice over here says it also has to be entered into discovery as evidence, which is true.
Yes.
So he hasn't been able to look at this.
Yes. So Geoffrey's attorney was absolutely correct in asking for a mistrial. Absolutely. And right when she said that and he went objection, my heart dropped into my feet, because I was like, oh my God. And especially the whole time while they send the jury out and they're having he's making his case and the state's making her case. And I'm just sitting there going, no. I'm thinking to myself, this cannot happen. This man has not only in his past essentially gotten away with so many things, allegedly, but this trial, this case has gone on for 2 years. I mean, the man had a pandemic, essentially not gifted to him, but gifted to him to give him time. The COVID happened and that gave him time. And then even after COVID happened, it kept getting pushed back, and it kept getting pushed back because of the defense. The last time it got pushed back, it was originally scheduled for, what was it, August or something like that. August, I don't remember when it was. Originally scheduled for to go right before this scheduling. And Geoffrey's attorney.
It's August of this
August.
Year. Yeah, and prior to that, it was October of 2020.
Exactly. Geoffrey's attorney had an emergency and couldn't be in court that day. So, at this point, it's beyond frustrating because
Shelby, do you think they were doing that because they thought this was miraculously going to go away?
No, I mean, I think they were trying to buy themselves more time.
For what?
I think to prepare a defense, to try to have, come up with something, because even in the trial, their defense was terrible. Like their defense for this whole thing was just not plausible in any sense. It was just, I mean, even the defense attorney, opening statements, closing statements, lines of questioning, objections.
Yeah.
He's fumbling over every word.
Yeah. And I did notice in the court that he got a stern talking to by the judge. Like, what you're not about to do is accuse anyone of doing anything, because essentially during this objection, which almost triggered a mistrial, the defense was alluding to the fact that the prosecutor and Kristen collaborated during the break for her to somehow blurt out that there was this prior bad act. And when the judge was listening to the defense attorney try to actually accuse the prosecutor of misconduct, he slapped that down like, what you're not about to do is this. And then you saw that his lawyer kind of backed off a little bit, because he knew that what he's trying to say in a court of law was, in my opinion, disgusting. This woman is trying to do her job, and you're now saying that she is colluding with her client.
Geoffrey's lawyer rubbed me the wrong way the entire time, and he rubbed me the wrong way because he triggered like all this stuff in me, as he was very similar to Geoffrey in my opinion. But yeah. So when he goes for the mistrial, I'm like, oh my God. And so there's a part of me that's like, oh my God, knowing that he's correct in what he's doing. But then there's a part of me that's terrified that somehow
he's going to get away with it.
He's going to get away, not away because they would have rescheduled the trial, but he's going to get more time to come back to his social media, to
create a narrative.
Cause harm, cause damage,
Yep. To create a narrative, because now we've all seen it. He had more to work with. And if there's a mistrial, he'll have, because it's courts, the courts in the United States, they work quite slowly. So he would have had enough time to coordinate a new narrative, and anything that was brought up thus far, he could have a counter to and be more prepared if indeed there was going to be a next trial. Now I want to talk about the part where, so the judge goes away, right? And he's going to think about whether or not there should be a mistrial. Everyone's on sticks and stones. And like I said, Court TV, the commentator, the experts, the lawyers, they were 100% convinced, and like you, thought that there was going to be a mistrial. 100%. So we're all sitting there waiting. The judge comes back and he says, you know what? Although there's grounds for objection here, I don't think what Kristen said was enough to warrant a mistrial. So I'm going to do, and I can't remember the name of the word, but there's a word, which is a directive. I'm going to tell the jury to disregard that last statement.
Yes.
And then what I thought was interesting, Shelby, is the fact that the judge said that, and then Geoffrey's lawyer was like, yeah, okay, well, you say that, and also make sure to punish Kristen for saying that. And I need it to be like a stern punishment, right? He did all that. So wait, what? You're trying to not only, in my opinion, from what I watched the last 2 days, almost victim blame, saying that this is some alcoholic, drunken woman that blacked out, that has rage issues, that has mental health issues, according to their side. But now also is in this elaborate scheme with her attorney in order to bring in prior acts to throw this whole, like, I was thinking, what does she have to gain by this? She had nothing to gain because she would not want to trigger a mistrial. So I thought that was important. What do you have to say?
Yes, I in that time period of when that all was going on, I was very disgusted with Geoffrey's attorney. You know, like I felt like he was a little boy that had, you know, not gotten his way. And, you know, I think even after the judge came back, and I don't know if I'm recalling this correctly, but, you know, said that he was not going to grant a mistrial, that the defense said, well, I just want it to be noted that I am requesting a mistrial. Yeah. And, you know, I when they broke and we were waiting for the judge to come back, I went over kind of why he shouldn't declare a mistrial. And here's what my biggest reasoning. Not necessarily that what Kristen said wasn't enough, but at this point in the trial, this, and again, this is not legal, whatever, but Geoffrey would have never been able to, per the law, have essentially a fair trial anywhere. Because at this point, it's been displayed on not only national television live, but it's worldwide. So how could you ever essentially try that again? First off, if I was his attorney, I'd have a field day with that. You know, it's already been on national television. Everybody's already seen it. How can we really know that the jurors have not already seen these photographs and her testimony and his testimony and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, Shelby, but I can make that argument, but that happens regularly. And given that it's on court TV, there have been, other trials that have been significant that do get retried. There are millions of people in the world, and there are people that aren't interested in this. And I want to say that because, you know, they did keep referring to Geoffrey as a reality star. A lot of people, even when I was covering it on my Instagram, a lot of people didn't even know who he was. They didn't know that storyline. They didn't know that narrative. And so I think that they would absolutely, if it went to a new trial, be able to find people, you know, like my mom doesn't watch 90 Days. She doesn't know who the hell.
That's what I was going to say. Like,
there's a grandma out there somewhere in Knoxville, Tennessee, that is like, the reality what? Who are you talking about? You know, so that would have been fine. So let's get back to, because we have so much to talk about. We have 2 days of trial to talk about, and then we also still have to talk about your history with them, because I've now settled and I have my questions for you. So just know that. Patty, again, thank you so much. She says, this is such an important trial for all of us. Yes, I'm triggered, but I need to see this happen now. Patty, thank you so much. And because Patty did bring that up, I want to also, again, talk about the hotline.org, you guys. The hotline.org is 24/7. If you are in a situation, you know someone that's in a situation, have this in your back pocket, put it to memory. It's 100% completely anonymous. I had it at the top of the show, but I guess I will also pop it up again. I went and researched it, you guys. The number 800-799-SAFE, and it's 100% anonymous. It shows you how to clear it from your cache. So if you or anyone you know is in this type of situation, you 100% will not be tracked. You can call them, you can text them, you can chat with them. 1-800-799-SAFE. Important to note that. Just so you guys know, because this is a very triggering conversation that we have, and domestic abuse, domestic violence is more common than you guys would think. So let's get to the point. Shelby, the judge says the show must go on. Basically, ignore what just happened. We find out from Kristen's attorney that she was actually going to rest her case. She had nothing else to say or ask Kristen. So Kristen comes up and then said, that's all we need from you. We get to closing arguments. Now, I was worried again for the second time. And this is my disclaimer, Shelby. I watch true crime, court TV, ID channel,
Me too.
all the channels, all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Law and Order, like anything, all the
Mhm.
time. And so it's trained in my mind that, the closing arguments are the most important because it's the last impression you are leaving with the jurors.
Mhm.
Okay. Now there's a couple of things that I was like, oh my God, what's happening? So the prosecutor goes and does her closing argument. Now, a couple of things that came to mind were, one, she had Kristen on the stand. She got dragged by court TV because she talked about the pictures that we showed earlier and
Mhm.
how brutal that beating was. And she went through them in depth. But then when she had Geoffrey on the stand, she didn't ask Geoffrey anything about these photos. She didn't, question him at all. She just questioned him about these text messages and that timeline and him being on a reality show and all the things, right? So she was being dragged by all the experts. Like, wait, why would you not confront him? Come to find out during her closing argument that she had a strategy. And the strategy was that she wasn't going to spend time asking Geoffrey about these photos since he emphatically denied knowing anything about these photos. He's never seen these photos. He doesn't know what she's talking about. The last time that he knew anything, she had a small red mark on her head from when she fell over. Then, what does the prosecutor do with her closing argument? She pops those photos up and basically says, a picture is worth 1,000 words. The defense wants you to believe one thing, but these are the photos. These are the evidence you have. And again, I think it might be important, you guys. So bear with me. It might trigger some things in you. And so I want to let you know that I'm going to pop up some of these photos just so you know. So prosecutor says, the narrative you're saying is that she fell. These marks on the back of your neck, how did she get marks on the back of her neck when she fell over? How did both of her eyes blacken when she fell over? How does she get the scrape on her arm? How does she get the swelling of her knees? How does she get the bruising on her the top of her foot? Right? All of these things you're saying. First she fell over, then she fell into a wall, then she ran into a door frame. Like, your story has changed over and over. But at the end of the day, the prosecutor said the pictures right here speak the volumes, and listen to the volumes. And now it's going to come to, who do you believe? Do you want to add anything to that before I move on to what the defense said?
Yeah, that was pretty much her line of what she was going on. And when closing arguments came, everybody was going not trashing, but like saying stuff about Heather.
Yeah, because she kept it short. She kept it about the evidence, and then that was it.
Well, no, everyone was saying stuff about her previously, how she had been during the entire trial, that everybody was a mess, that she was everybody was all over. They were saying it about the defense attorney and her, that just neither one of them, they were like, how long they've been practicing law, like, is this her first case? And so closing arguments came, I was like, come on, Heather. I was like, bring it home, girl, bring it home. And I thought when she popped that picture up, I knew she was going to do that. I wasn't asking when Geoffrey was up there the entire time, why is she not showing these pictures? I think everybody wanted her to show it, like this dramatic, because, we've seen a lot of Law and Order, they show the picture and they get in,
that's what they wanted.
Abuser's face, and they break him down, and then all of a sudden he goes, okay, I did it. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
And so Heather said exactly what you said in her interview later, is that up until that point, he had stuck to the fact that there was a small red line mark going down her face. And he didn't see a pump knot on her head, and he didn't see a huge welt. And so it would have been redundant for her to show him the photos because she knew that he was not cooperating with her. He was not going to budge. And when she showed him those photos, it was just repetitive. He was just going to say, oh, no, she didn't look like that to me. That's not, that's not what happened. So when she put them up at the end, I was not surprised. And I thought that was the good strategy. And I thought she brought everything full circle. She tied everything together. She pieced the entire series of events in Kristen's version, put everything in place. And Geoffrey's version is just nothing fits. And, she said to them, use your common sense here. Like, just use common sense with this story, with these photos, with all of that. And I thought she did a great job. I thought it was short, sweet, to the point. I thought at that point she flowed completely when she spoke. I thought she was great. I felt good after her closing argument.
And then the defense went up, and I'm not gonna his defense. Let's just say the defense's closing arguments they were long. He talked for a very long time, and he started.
Do we even know how long it was? I wasn't timing it, but
it felt like a good 45 minutes.
Sure.
It was very long. It was like he had started all over again. He started about when they went to dinner, how much they drank, the 5 hours, the drinking, the driving, the going home, and saying how we're all on the same page until after the brasserie where the stories diverge and you're going to believe this story or you're going to believe that story. And he literally went into both stories.
And then he brought up the diagram on the screen, which I didn't even I looked at it, but I didn't understand what he was talking about with each of those things. But, he does this big theatrics of the prosecution has to take you from this point all the way across the room to beyond reasonable doubt. And then he kept going back. Again, they got to take you across. And he kept repeating everything to the point that the state objects, which is not commonplace for there to be objections.
That's what I was saying. So this is like a trial that I was like, this is so fascinating to me.
This trial's crazy.
I've never seen this. So not only are the commentators and experts saying, oh, it's messy and we haven't seen this and she should have done that and should have done this. And then the defense attorney has this long, it was like he was doing his dissertation for 45 minutes. But then there's an objection to closing arguments. I'd never seen it before. Never. Shelby, I was like, oh, what's going to happen right now?
I was like, oh my God. But at the same time, I was like, thank you. If she hadn't objected,
he would have gone on a tangent.
Because he even came back after the objection and went on probably for another 15 minutes. He was like, okay, so coming back to da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh my God.
And it was like he was spinning a narrative, but it was also like he was testifying. And so it was, to me, he was muddying the waters. Like, let me just keep talking, and maybe the jury will be confused. Mm-hmm. That's the vibe I got.
Yes,
so
exactly.
She objects. The judge allows the objection. She says what she's going to say. They sidebar, come back, and she, which again, I've never seen before, Shelby, ever, was able to then, what do I even call it? She was able to
She was able to give a rebuttal.
A rebuttal to her his closing statement. So she closes, he closes, she rebuts. Never seen it before. I
felt like the trial and the drama was fitting for Geoffrey. You know what I mean? Like, this guy wanted this trial to be on court TV. Like, you go to court TV and say, hey, I'm charged with aggravated kidnapping, domestic assault, interference with the 911 call, and vandalism. Do you think you can cover it for me? Who does that? And guess what happened in the end? Got taken away in handcuffs. But So the drama and the twists and turns and the gasps and the this, it was like a reality TV show.
It really was.
It was
so
like,
here's what's fitting. It was like a reality TV show. It's like a mini show, 2 days long. Second, what I didn't know, and I feel ashamed for not knowing, but October is Domestic Violence Abuse Month. And I'm going to talk about that. So it was fitting to me that this trial happened during the month that we talk about domestic abuse and bring awareness to domestic abuse and survivors and victims. Now, they go out, the judge gave a long jury instruction.
yeah.
Jury instruction probably was like 15 minutes. And when you guys, I say, because anyone that watches my show, you guys know that I take copious notes. I have notepads and books. People make fun of me all the time, but I take so many notes because I want to remember things. And so when he was doing this 15-minute jury instruction, in my mind, Shelby, I was like, are they going to remember everything? Because there are all these charges, and I want to pop the main charges up for you. So the state of Tennessee versus Geoffrey Paschel. The charges were kidnapping, domestic assault, interference with an emergency call, and vandalism. Those were the main charges. These are felony charges, okay? But each charge had a lower misdemeanor charge. So if you don't find him guilty of kidnapping, you can then find him guilty of like a forcible consignment, or what's the word I'm looking for? That's not the right word. Confinement, forcible confinement.
Yeah.
Right? So there was a main charge felony, and on the bottom there was a misdemeanor. Main charge felony, bottom misdemeanor, and he went through them and he listed them for about 15 minutes. And in my mind, Shelby, I was like, but wait, are they gonna remember all of this? Like, do they get notes? I've never sat on a jury trial, but I was like, they better 100% get some type of, the court reporter better show them like, these are all the things you can either do A or B, because there's no way you're going to remember all of that.
It goes back with them, that instruction. So they're able to go over and read it again. But I felt the same way. But he had a lot of charges. So I guess that's what's happened. I mean, I guess, he only had 3. I mean, I can't imagine if he had like 10, they would have been there for an hour.
So then after the jury instructions, jury is dismissed to go deliberate. Mm-hmm. Now I was thinking there's no way they're going to come to a verdict today. There's no way, because they're already on East Coast time. I'm on the West Coast, so they're 3 hours ahead. Normally courts are on what I call banking hours, the 9 to 5 and the 1 hour breaks and all this stuff. So I was like, oh, there's no way. 1 hour went by and Court TV was doing a countdown, right? So I'm in the midst of doing whatever I was doing, but I'm like peeking over at the countdown to see. 1 hour goes by, nothing. 2 hours goes by, nothing. I was like, oh, it's not going to happen.
They only deliberated for an hour and 47 minutes.
Dude, all of a sudden, Court TV is like, there's a verdict.
We're back.
What?
Mm-hmm.
And from watching all the shows, I knew in my heart that he was going to be found guilty. Mm-hmm. Because when they come back like so fast, it means that there was no disagreement with everyone's like, nope. Let's take that first vote. Vote. Okay, boom.
Mm-hmm. Now, I thought they were going to come back quick. I wasn't surprised by that. Now, I was nervous a little bit because every once in a blue moon, coming back really quick can sometimes be, not guilty. So I ran out of my house and like ran 2 errands like really quickly, and I was like, speeding around. I was like, I gotta get back. And like, sure enough, I got back, and like 5-10 minutes later, I'm getting, messages, DMs, they're back. So I didn't know. And I guess probably because I had a personal stake in what happened, I was like I was shaking like I haven't shook in a very long time.
So jury's back. The judge, says, bring me the verdict. And there was less than 10 seconds, and the defense stood. So Geoffrey stood with his lawyers and he read the charges. So, and it wasn't in this order. I'm just going to read so you guys can go through it. So the kidnapping charge, guilty. Domestic assault, guilty. Interference with an emergency call and vandalism, guilty. They sat down and then Geoffrey just sat there, still mask on, but he had his head down. And you could see he was having a moment in his mind where he was processing it because he really didn't believe that he was ever going to be convicted. Mm-hmm. And I felt in that moment too, like he was almost going to be teary-eyed, but he didn't. You could tell.
He actually was. He actually was crying.
Was he? Because I didn't really. Okay, well.
I'm told that by someone in the court.
Oh, got it.
So yes, he was crying, and I kind of was looking like, is he crying? Like, is he like? I was thinking he's never gonna let that show that to anybody. Mm-hmm. Like maybe he'll cry when he goes through the doors, but yep, his head went down, and he didn't lift it up again until it was time to take off his jacket and be placed in handcuffs.
So. That's what I was going to say next. So then, because we just said it was like watching reality TV, guys, and I'm going to talk more about this because it's a whole separate component, but the Varia stuff and all the stuff. So he takes off his jacket. He takes off his mask. Oh, that was very good.
Is my phone? Hold on. Oh, hold on. There's something ringing. I'm sorry. No, okay, go.
He takes off his jacket.
I don't know why this is still going. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
And then he takes off his mask. And then the camera turns. And there's a little bit of leaning in and talking. Mm-hmm. You can tell that something's going on because and this person said it, Michelle says it too, the defense attorney was pissed. I don't think the defense attorney thought he was going to lose either. But you see Geoffrey start talking to someone, the camera pans, and lo and behold, it's Mary and Ashley. Mary, who he dated, who we all know from the 90 Day Fiance world, and Ashley, if you guys follow Geoffrey or did follow Geoffrey on social media, Ashley was his neighbor. He often went live with her on his socials. They were the two people left in the courtroom that were on his side supporting him. And I, for one, was shocked. I was shocked. And then when Court TV, the commentator came back and said, because I didn't actually see that part. I only saw the jacket come off Shelby and I saw the mask come off. But then when the commentator too also said that he took his wedding band off and popped it on the table. I had all the questions. And so I want to talk about that with you, Shelby, since you have the inside scoop. So, why was Mary there supporting him? Because the last I heard, Mary she went live. I have video of it. It's on my social media where she basically was in a new relationship. She was done with Geoffrey. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically they got into a big fight. He did this and did that and did this. And she was fed up with it. Drinking was involved in that as well. And she had to leave him at the restaurant. And she was no longer going to be a part of his life because it was just too toxic for her. So then I was like, well, how is it now, fast forward a year and she's the biggest supporter again after all that he's put her through. And he even during the show completely denied her, chose Varia over her, was like, oh, I don't look at you like that. You're just my friend. She moves on with her life, says he's too toxic for her, says it on her social media, and then boom, you're there as his supporter. Why was she there, Shelby?
So I found out that Mary was in the courtroom earlier in the day. And I was confused because I watched that live as well. And I was friends with Mary when that live was recorded and all of that. And I knew that she was done with him. Just briefly, what happened was in December of 2020, she alleges that her and her boyfriend and Geoffrey and this woman, not Varia, but a woman that he was with, go out to a Chili's. The woman gets completely inebriated. So does Geoffrey. And Mary's looking at something on her phone and the woman comes over and wants to see what it is and says, what is it? And hits her phone down. And so her and Mary start going at it, bickering, whatever. And the bartender kicks them out. He's going to call the police. And Geoffrey and this woman are just, can't control them. And so they leave, and Mary's been drinking, but not to the point that she is, impaired. And so is her boyfriend. And they leave and they go to drive home, and Mary gets pulled over by the police, and Geoffrey and this girl just continue on. And Mary was pissed because she said every time she would go out with Geoffrey, she would start the night off by saying, can we please just have a normal night tonight? And it never would go that way. It would always turn into something big, chaotic like this. So she said on that live, I'm not friends with him anymore. I'm not with him anymore. I haven't been with him a really long time. And people said, well, kind of asked like, well, are you going to be friends with him again or anything? And even in future posts and live, she would be asked, are you friends with Geoffrey or anything? Like, no.
So why do you think she was there?
I was surprised that she was there. I was a little disgusted because what my take is, I don't know why she was there. I have not spoken to anyone that's spoken to her. I have no idea. I can only, and this is an assumption, but I kind of pieced together a couple things. Her shirt. She was in a bright green, like, I don't know if it's 3/4 length or long sleeve or whatever, but it was a bright green up to here shirt with a off-white vest over top. Now, I've seen Mary dress in person, and I've seen Mary on her Instagram. I would say Mary has a sense of style. She's not wearing a lime green shirt like that, neon green. So, because immediately when the camera pans, you go right to that shirt and right to Mary. So, do I think it was intentional for her being there and being in that shirt? Yes. The ring wasn't in fact a wedding ring. It was a fidget thing for him to not fidget, not click on the pen, for him to use that. But do I think that he intentionally took it off and placed it on the table so that it looked like a wedding ring? I mean, he took it off before they ever read the verdict, before he stood up. It was sitting on that table for a decent amount of time.
My understanding, sorry to cut you off, but my understanding from what I've been reading is that he was told to wear that in order to appear like he's the big family man. And it goes along with what we were saying earlier, the appearance with the suit, the mask, and now a wedding ring. The jury doesn't know him from Adam. Is he married? Is he not married? But it fit the narrative of him being a family man. That being said, I popped this on. 90 Day Petty did a meme. And this is that green shirt that you're talking about with the vest, very homely looking.
Glasses, hair down by the side of her face,
Yep.
Not styled. I mean, maybe it wasn't told to her to wear that shirt for Geoffrey, but that shirt was intentionally worn, even if it was intentionally worn by Mary. Do you think it was intentional
to be noticed?
To be noticed, and for her, whatever, to continue. Like, there's a chance Geoffrey's going away to prison. So if there's a chance Geoffrey, and this again is all assumption, but if there's a chance that he's going away to prison, she can make out. But again, I don't think she thought it through about what the fandom reaction,
right, the consequences of that, because the fandom has hawk eyes and they see everything and talk about everything. So that, in essence, was the entire trial. Now, they revoked his bond, and so he was immediately placed into custody. They talked about sentencing. He will be in jail for the next 45 days until December 3rd, where they are going to have his sentencing. And in sentencing, it can be 8 years to 30 years, you guys. So he is looking at real time
8 years to 30 years just on the kidnapping.
That is not my understanding.
That's what the kidnapping carries. The assault is between, I think the assault's between 2 and 8.
Okay.
I mean, that's, I'm trying to see if I,
so I have this from Court TV, and it says, there's a little bit of an echo. Okay, it's gone. So after just under 2 hours of deliberation, a jury of 12 found Geoffrey Paschel guilty of all counts. Count 1, guilty of the aggravated kidnapping, domestic assault, and interference with emergency calls. On October 7th, 2021, Judge Kyle Hickson revoked the reality TV star's bond, ordered him into custody, and sent the sentence. And set a sentencing hearing for December 3rd of 2021. So the count 2 of the guilty of domestic violence, you're saying, is that it's the first count of kidnapping is 8 to 30. The second count to guilty of domestic violence, you're saying, is 8.
I'm gonna
and then the third count, guilty of interference of an emergency call. What's the time frame on that?
That I don't remember reading any time frame of that, but I vividly remember. Now, again, this is all stuff that I'm reading coming in on comments and DMs and other posts and this, that, and the other, but I do know that the minimum he can get is 12 years. So the minimum he can get is 12. These are non-probatable offenses, which means that he has to do 100% of his sentence. There is no good time. There is no parole. There's nothing. So at the minimum, he has to do 12 years. Yeah. Full time.
So, and I think also it's important to note that they are estimating that because it's all up to the judge whether the years of his sentencing are going to run individually or concurrently or how they're going to run. So 8 to 30, you guys, either way, it's a long time. This is not 2 years. It's not 5 years. It's not like, oh, he's going to do 10 and get out in 5. Whatever he's convicted of, he is doing that hard time and he is going to prison. Now, does that take away from the fact that he will still be able to appeal? And the experts are saying that he's probably going to appeal. He will still be appealing from prison. So let's be clear on that. He's not going to get out and be like, oh, I'm appealing my case, if indeed he's granted an appeal. So this is very serious, you guys. This trial, this conviction is the real deal, period.
I think that's important to say because, in this 90-Day Fiance world and the coverage and the, storylines and all this kind of stuff, it can get, and everyone was kind of saying this yesterday, it's like, this is real life, heavy duty stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this man is in prison at least. Now, I heard minimum from the DA, the minimum he can get for all of it, any of it, is 12 years. Maybe it's 8, but let's play devil's advocate and say it's 8. He's 43 years old. So the minimum he's going to get out will be 51. But again, like I said, the DA is going for the max time for each charge.
Yeah.
He's a range 2 offender in Tennessee.
And here's the thing, you guys. Again, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so I think that it is fitting, per se. But I also want you guys to remember that this is a very, very serious topic. Many people are affected by domestic violence more than you would realize. I also wanted to say that there have been allegations swirling around Geoffrey for years now. This is not the first time that he's been accused of domestic assault. And, you can say allegation here, allegation here, allegation here. As of yesterday, he is convicted felon and domestic abuser. And regardless whether he spends 8 years, 12 years, 30 years, 50 years, the rest of his life in prison, that is who he is as of this point. And even if he appeals this and whatever that result is, it's domestic violence, period. There are women in his history that have been hurt by him. And it's important to know that those women have real lives, have been injured, and have to heal from that, and have to have that as part of their story moving forward and their journey moving forward. So I want us all, as the 90-day fandom, to be mindful of that. Domestic violence is a serious matter, period. I went ahead and popped on that the hotline.org. If you or anyone you know is affected by domestic violence, know that that's a 24-hour site that has, you can live chat with them, you can call them, whatever the case may be, you can reach out to them, and they're there 24/7. It's 100% anonymous, and they show you how you can erase it from your browser if you're in imminent danger. Now, we've covered the trial, and Shelby, I cannot let you leave this conversation without talking about your experience. And now that the beginning of the show, I did not know this about you. And so I was shook, and I needed a moment to compose myself. I want to know, first and foremost, what you would have done differently. So for those of you guys just joining us, Shelby Bart has had a personal relationship with Geoffrey, met him through social media, moved to his state. They were in a relationship kind of in the same time frame that he was in a relationship with some other women. He came to visit her in her state. So they were in, can I call it, Shelby? Can I say you were dating? Can I say it was a relationship? Like, how would you define what was going on between you and Geoffrey?
Let me grab this real quick. Hold on. My AC is like blowing on my head. So, I mean, I guess you can tell me what you think it is after I just briefly tell you what it was. We met on social media through Instagram, and from the day we spoke up until the day we broke up or ended things, we spoke every single day. Pretty much from the time the day began until the time the day ended. Via direct messages. At first, it was in DMs, and that was in March of 2020. I first went to Tennessee to visit him in May of 2020.
Did he invite you?
Hmm?
Did he invite you to come see him?
Yeah, almost immediately.
And were you guys FaceTiming, all the things, or was it just DMs?
So it was DMs, and then it was a lot of voice notes.
So you guys had not seen each other, like, even through the screen before you went to visit him? We had done one or two very brief video chats via Instagram. Shelby, you are one of the people that I talk about all the time on my show. What gave you the trust, knowing that you watch true crime shows like I watch true crime shows? What gave you the confidence and trust and belief that you could fly there and visit him and he be okay?
You know, hindsight's 2020, and
no, but okay. So let me ask
you.
Let me ask you. I'll give you an example. Okay. So I'm single, but I am super. I think maybe because I have African parents, but what you're not about to do is, even though I'm traditional and I would love for you to come and pick me up and drive me to our date, what I'm not about to do is let you on a first date, if I met you online, know where I live, nor am I going to get into a car with you for someone that I have not met. Now, I'm giving you the example of going on a first date in the same city with someone that I've never met. I've maybe talked to them, maybe I FaceTime them, maybe I've looked at their pictures, but I've never met them in real life. So my question to you, because that's me. I'm super like paranoid, super like, oh, you can't trust anybody. I've watched one too many true crime shows, coming up missing. I personally have my own, I'm not going to get into it, but during the pandemic, I was almost abducted, and that was like a whole thing and turned out to be a whole thing. Is another story. So I am very sensitive in stranger danger. So my question to you is this. Yes, you had a correspondence with him, and yes, maybe perhaps it made it a little bit easier, and tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth. It made it a little bit easier because you knew that he had a TV presence. So I don't know if in your mind it made it safer for you because he was a public figure. But again, my question to you is, what in your mind made it safe for you to fly to a state, to stay and visit with someone that, yes, you had an online relationship with, but you had never met in real life?
I think that, I honestly haven't really kind of like unpacked that part for myself.
Okay.
There's a lot going through my mind since the trial.
Yeah.
Since we broke up, a lot of things have come to light really since this. But I've thought back to it, like what was going on with me during that time that I made this decision, because I'm also the person that has watched the Craigslist Killer and all that kind of stuff. That's like, okay. And I've been on online dating apps, but I've never met anybody for the simple fact that I am like, 99% of the time doesn't happen, but I'm the 1% that things happen to. I think that I don't want to say starstruck because I don't even want to call him a star. But I think that when he like responded, I think there's this whole kind of thing these days around social media and influencers and who has a blue check mark, and he didn't have a blue check mark at the time, but I'm sitting there watching him on my television on a national, well-known public show, and here I'm holding my phone and he's talking to me. And I'll say this, like I, at the time was a person, I don't even want to say a woman, that was, like very easily swayed or whatever by these kind of flashy things. You know what I mean? So.
And I want to say this too. Don't think for 1 minute that I'm judging the situation, because I know that we're all, at the end of the day, we all want to find love, right? And so when we all want to find love, we may or may not do things that make sense to other people, but in the moment they make sense to us.
Exactly.
Right? So that being said, I just wanted to know, because like if it was Drake that was in my DM, I probably would have flown halfway across the world, and I've never met Drake in 1 minute of my life. So I understand that part. And I want all of our viewers to know that
this can happen.
There's nothing wrong with looking for love. You have not done anything wrong, and we're all looking for that. And in this situation, you've done nothing wrong. You were pursuing your heart, and I just want that to be put out there. Now, when you went, Shelby, because I'm nosy like that. So like, were you like, oh my God, like what should I bring with me? And how long am I staying? And where am I staying? Because I would do all the things. And how many outfits do I need? I want to know. That is the first question. And the second question, did he pick you up at the airport? Like what did that look like? And what was your first impression? That's 3 questions.
So I really had no clue what to pack. Not just because I didn't know where I was going. Essentially, I mean, I knew I was going to Tennessee, and I knew I was going to Knoxville, and I knew all that kind of stuff. And no, I had no clue what to expect Tennessee-wise, weather, this, that, and the other. But I also was like, I don't know what we're going to be doing. I don't know. Do I need, lounge clothes? Not dress clothes, but do I need like a shirt and jeans to go out? And I'm the kind of person that I don't like if I go out, I don't take 2 hours. I don't ever really put heat on my hair, put very minimal makeup, like all that kind of stuff. But of course I was like panicking a little bit.
Yeah.
So I remember I wore to the airport, and this is in May. I remember I was my exact outfit. I went out and bought my outfit. Not from Target, Walmart, but I bought it. And so I had on, to the ankle, black leggings that kind of came up, a little bit like high-waisted. And I had on a black, it's in my closet, a black cropped hooded hoodie. Because I was like, okay. And I had on, the sneakers that they have, the clunky ones, like the big sneaker, white tennis shoes. And so I was very nervous flying there. I came from Baltimore, so I had to fly from Baltimore to Charlotte and then Charlotte to Knoxville. And I messaged him in the morning. I took like the first flight out. When I got to I told him, when I get to Charlotte, I'll let you know, because from Charlotte to Knoxville, it's like a 30-minute flight. It's like you take take a puddle jumper, which I don't do well with. I'm not a good flyer. So when I saw this plane, I was like rethinking the entire thing. I was like, I'm just going to go home. So I get to Knoxville Airport, and you see Knoxville Airport on the show when he's saying goodbye to Baria. So, and this hadn't aired yet. So I didn't know, what I was walking into. And Knoxville Airport, there isn't like a walkway out of security and then you kind of walk out. You walk out, and then there's this big, open walkway that just kind of goes downhill to the baggage claim. And it's a small airport. And so I texted him that I landed, and he calls me. And meanwhile, we haven't even we've talked on the phone, FaceTime once, twice. And so he calls me, and right then and there, I'm nervous because I'm not a person that really talks on the phone. I text message, I do all that kind of stuff. Talking on the phone is foreign to me, weird to me. So I answer him, and I'm like, okay. And he says he's in the bathroom. So I'm expecting to not see him. And there's a cart, I guess, when the airport was active, it was used for coffee or whatever, a coffee cart. And so I'm walking down, and I didn't know, but he's standing behind the coffee cart, and he has a baseball hat on and a mask. The baseball cap's pulled really far down, and I can't. He texts me, and he's like, I see you. And so, of course, I'm like, well, where is he? And I'm looking everywhere, and then all of a sudden, he kind of steps out from behind the cart, whatever it is, and I'm like. And at first I was like, oh my God, because he looks like, not like a serial killer, but he's all hidden, and he creeps out from behind this cart, and there he is. And at first he was just standing there staring at me. Because I didn't see him at first. I didn't recognize him at first. And then finally I connect, and I realize it's him. And I'm like, oh. And so he comes over, he takes my bag, he puts it on his shoulder, and we walk outside to his car. Knoxville Airport, it's not a big, city airport. He was literally parked on the curb, on the loop where you drop people off. So we get in his car, and we go to leave, and he looks at me and he says, let's go home. And I'm like, okay. And so we're in the car driving, and he takes my hand, he holds my hand. And I'll be honest, I was giddy. I was excited. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. He's holding my hand. Is this really happening? Everything. And so I think the first time I went, it was I went for 5 days or something. I mean, it was a decent amount of time for not knowing what was going to happen. And so on the first trip, everything was very chill. We didn't leave the house. I mean, it's still May 2020, so the pandemic has only been going on for 2 months. So everything's still pretty much shut down. I mean, the grocery stores, whatever, are open. And Tennessee was open more quickly than anywhere else. So the first time we pretty much just stay at the house. We don't, in the morning, we wake up, he works out for 3 hours. I sat in the gym in that brown, if you've seen in all of his stories, that brown, you call it leather chair. I would sit there while he would work out. And I didn't know it at the time, but he was constantly on his phone, and so it was cause of contention over the course of many visits because he on his phone from morning to morning. I won't even say morning to night, because even in the middle of the night, I would wake up at 3 a.m. and he's on his phone. And so I didn't know it at the time. And again, I can't, I can't prove that he was talking to these people at that time, but he was always talking to different women. That's why he was constantly on his phone. He told me, well, I have to check my Instagram and I have to respond to comments. This is my job,
I believe it, Shelby, because earlier when I said he's a collector of women, hearing your story it's just verifying that.
So, and the first visit, he like said to me, he's like, you're totally my kind of girl because we need to hang out at the house. You don't need to go out and do stuff to have fun. And when I say we sat in the house, and this may seem funny to some people, but we sat in the house and all we watched was the Justice Channel. All we watched were true crime shows. All we watched were court show reenactment shows, constantly on the TV in the living room, and the TV would be on at night when we would sleep. And I remember waking up and hearing, that those narrators that she moved into the room. And I'm like, oh my God,
But there had been signs. That's one of from the ID channel.
Yes, yeah. I was like, whatever. So,
and I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's important to also note that Geoffrey is an actor, and he's been on those true crime enactment shows. He's played the BTK killer. He's played like an FBI agent on Joe Kenda's
Homicide Hunter.
Yeah, all the things. So that makes sense what you're saying.
And so on the first visit, if anyone remembers, he was kind of putting out in the beginning. I did, yes. It was from March 2020 until really the beginning of March of 2021 is when the last time we ever spoke, but it really ended in the end of January. But so we didn't really do anything. And at this time he was kind of, if you remember in the beginning when everything came out, he was he put a couple cooking tutorial videos on his YouTube. So what we did that visit was I filmed a couple times I would film for him cooking stuff. And I have all of these clips that we didn't use on my phone, geo marked, because I have an iPhone, as Greenback, Tennessee. I mean, it's interchangeable. Friendsville, Greenback is where he lives. And then also we shaved his dog. So the picture of him on his Instagram standing next to his dog without his shirt on, smiling, I took that photo. And I actually sent it to him right the day he posted it and said, you should post this. This is like a thirst trap photo, you with your dog. So, and I recorded the entire video that he posted on his YouTube of him shaving his dog. And I have clips of that on my phone. So that was the first visit. I went back the end of June. And in June, Ashley has now entered the picture. But in June, I didn't really see.
What do you mean by Ashley has entered the picture? Because I only understand her as being the neighbor.
So she's not his neighbor. She lives about a good 10 minutes away from him, totally across the main road.
Did they date?
No. Okay. Ashley, I'm not entirely sure how they met. But Geoffrey ended up buying this small house, and it's the house that he was renovating the most recently on his stories and all that kind of stuff. He procured this tiny little house that was horrible. A hoarder had previously lived in there, and it was, not hoarding with things like trash and dirt, and it was disgusting. And he was remodeling it, from what I was told, for his oldest son and his wife to live in. And this house was right on the lot right next to Ashley's house. So I don't know if they met when he bought this house and she came down, to see what was going on. I don't know, but they met and she became, let me put it this way. To Ashley, he was her best friend, but to Geoffrey, she was not his. But I don't want to go into much about, Ashley and all that kind of stuff because I'm not going to like.
Right. It's
dox
about you.
anyone.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Was there ever a moment, given now knowing, since you've known him from some time, his history, that you ever felt threatened or were in a situation where it gave you pause?
That's probably the scariest thing to me right now is that he was so collected and calm and not violent in any way. And I was with him when he was blackout drunk. I was with him when he was pissed off, all different emotions. And I never saw that side of him. That's why I believed the story, and that's why I believed all of it, because I was like, I felt like, having been in a domestic violent relationship before, that I would pick up on that. And that was kind of my excuse and explanation to everyone in my life that was like smart and had common sense, was, like, I don't get that vibe at all. I mean, the first time I went, my mother made me download a location app, so she constantly had my location. She was terrified. My family was terrified. But is there a time? Yes, but not over thinking that he was going to hurt me. There was just a couple different behaviors that, I didn't agree with, but I'll admit that I didn't listen to like my gut and act on them. I mean, the level of intoxication that he would get to, and like, given at this point, I'd seen the drunken lives and like all of that kind of stuff, but blacked out, and like, I don't drink. So someone that like is blacked out and comes home and takes off all their clothes and just lays down in the bed, like naked, like, and you got to take care of, that's not my thing. But again, I didn't stop. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things that happened.
Wait, because we're on this topic, and sorry again to cut you off. Mm-mm. In your opinion and your experience with him, is Geoffrey an alcoholic?
The behaviors that I saw were that of a binge alcoholic. So
when you would spend time with him, would you guys be, not you per se, but was he drinking every time you were with him? Or were there periods of time that alcohol was not involved?
During the week, he would not drink. But come maybe Thursday, Friday night, he had a like a water bottle, like, one of those 32-ounce, like, clear water bottles that you have the handle. And he would put 4 Coronas in there and a lime. And that's what he would be drinking during his lives. And it looked like water. And he would drink one of those, and then he would fill it up again with 4, and he would drink that. And that would be before we would ever leave the house. Then we would go and leave the house. And I mean, when we were out, he didn't really get a lot of drinks while we were out. And that's because he didn't want to pay for drinks. He was a very miserly guy.
Frugal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, listen, he's the first one to admit that he's frugal. I mean, if anyone's watched him in the last couple weeks, the man was stranded 2 separate times, thousands of miles from his home. He slept in a Walmart one night. Like, so anyway, when we went out, he didn't really, sometimes he would have a sip of this person's drink or finish this person's drink, or you would turn around and he was drinking, the rest of someone's beer. We went out one time and we went to, it was like a opening of some sort of studio, but it was opening of a studio with wine, and the wine were in those little tiny plastic little
mini bottles,
wine glasses. And so they would fill them up. And I guess it was like a little bit less than what a shot of like liquor would be. And Geoffrey just shot drink after drink after drink. And I can say that he didn't realize the speed at which he was drinking until it hit him. And that night he was like, that was probably the only night when we were out that I saw him like sitting in the chair, like, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And he proceeded to drink people's drinks when we got to the place after the wine tasting. But yeah, he was definitely blacked out. But every time, yeah, there was drinking every time.
Shelby, I want to address someone in the live chat just so we can clarify. So the first question here was she the one that fake sent those text messages that were in court pretending to be his ex-fiance? I really want you to address this so there is no confusion out there.
I really don't know what interview she's...
Okay, so that's the second part of this,
right?
Is because she did say that she helped him with phone messages at another interview with Yahoo Boy. I think you should just be direct. Either you helped him with these messages from the court case, or you did not.
No, absolutely not. I had nothing to do with this court case. I never spoke to the prosecutor. I never spoke to the defense. I never asked if I could be a witness. They never asked me to testify. Nothing to do with this case. So no, I didn't help him with any text messages, and I didn't help him with any messages. So I'm not really sure what you're referring to, if you could elaborate. But yeah, so there was drinking every time. So I went May, June, August, and October. October was the last time that I went and visited him. It wasn't the last time I saw him. And each time was
Did
different.
he fly you out, or did you fly yourself out?
It was a mix. Sometimes he would split it, and never fully flew me out. And when I was there, and again, I can't prove this, but I'm so sorry. My dog is drinking water, if you can hear that. I can't prove this, but every time, and I know his people are gonna come after me for this, but every time that I was with him, whenever we went anywhere outside of a restaurant, bar, everything was the 5-finger discount everywhere. Down to the gas stations we went to, the fried chicken sandwiches he would get for us.
Is it Steve?
Now, I know everyone's going to attack me and say it's not true and say that's not the case, but yes, every time we went anywhere, and I will admit that one time I helped steal stuff. He handed me stuff and I put it under my shirt and walked out. So,
were you not scared?
Yes, of course I was. I mean, I've been caught in my younger days shoplifting, so I know what getting caught for shoplifting is like.
But let me follow that up with, did you maybe, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I want you to answer but maybe part of it was, like you said earlier, like being mystified by him, yeah, and not wanting to let him down per se.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like say that I was completely like, you know, at his like whatever, like, you know, submitting to him. But I mean, I was just caught up in all of it, you know, like it was just an entire whirlwind completely. When I look back on it now, it's very blurry. It's not very clear. It doesn't feel like it really ever happened and it was real. But yeah, I think it was just everything. And there was a part of me, because as the season went on, you know, his followers grew and his presence grew. And then at one point, it might have been after the May visit or the June visit, I start getting attention because Tote the Memes, that page, and you shared it too, I believe, right? This is how when we first started talking. They caught me on his sofa. Everyone called it Couchgate because I took a selfie or whatever on his sofa and posted it to my stories. And all you could see was some stitching on the couch sofa. And the page put it together. Look at the stitching here and look at the stitching from him in this video on the couch. And it's the same couch. And he's been following her for weeks, and he likes all of her photos, and his son Dakota follows her and he likes her photos. So like there's definitely something going on. And then articles are written, you know, that are on Google and this, that, and the other. And like, it was just a lot, like all of it. Help me understand.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Getting crazy now. Yeah, I did know everything. But I absolutely believed his story. I only had the information that he was giving me. Had never seen the photos. I had never seen. Yep, he did say that. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So anyway, whatever happened and everything ended. And at that point, when things ended, a bunch of women started contacting me.
Now, why did it end? What ended it? And when did it end?
The last time I spoke to him was March 1st of this year. And it ended because I found out about other women, and one of the girls I had made like a phone call with I remember I was on my way home from Florida. We had a phone call and she set me up. She set me up because she's like, call me, tell me what you have to, you know, tell me about what Geoffrey is doing, this, that, and the other. And so I get on the phone with her and we start talking, and then all of a sudden Geoffrey's voice comes in.
So she set you up in that she put you on a 3-way call that you didn't know Geoffrey was on, and perhaps you were saying some things that he didn't know that you were saying?
No. Well, I was telling her that I existed.
Okay.
Because he was telling her he wasn't with Varia, nobody else existed, she was the only one. And there was about a total of 12 women over the course of the time that I was with him that he did this with.
I believe it.
And I mean, all across the world. A young girl in the Netherlands, one in Scotland. This girl was in New Mexico. I was in Maryland. So, I mean, so many women. So I get essentially caught by him on this 3-way. And that was it. He was done. I was done. And he started coming at me. The threats started coming. No physical threats, but the threats of, you know, the public, whatever. He was going to ruin my life, like all that kind of stuff. And he proceeded to. His narrative then came because the truth page comes out, right? All the women kind of get together and we're pissed. You know what I mean? And so we get together with all of our text messages, all of our screenshots. We're comparing notes with voice memos, you know, dates, times, all this kind of stuff. And we get to the conclusion that we've all been played for the entire year. Some of us for the whole time, some less, some for brief periods of time. I mean, so many different scenarios. And so we get together and we decide that we're gonna expose this. You know what I mean? Like everybody just thinks that he is just the you know, the cream of the crop and this amazing guy, and he's gorgeous, and you know, he's all this kind of stuff. And we're sitting here saying to each other, like, no, and we're angry. We're angry because we know how he really is, and nobody was willing to listen to us. You know what I mean? Nobody was willing to listen to us and hear our story. And anything that we sent to anybody, you know, they're like, you made those up. Like supporters of Geoffrey, no meme page would touch it because they were afraid that Geoffrey would strike their page. And it wasn't revenge. And he wasn't single, because we also found out that he was with Varia this entire time. Planning with Varia, he had her enter the green card lottery. She won. And she came over in December, and we all found out about each other in February. So we all already knew she was there. So it wasn't revenge. It was more like, first off, he wanted people to know who he really was. You know what I mean? Like all these people are fooled by him. All these women, you know, he's getting more and more of this stage to like present his manipulation and BS. And so we thought we had a shot at having people open their eyes. And it got some attention, it got some, views. But again, Geoffrey, as good as he is, explains it all away. And his explanation was that he had no clue he only focused on me. And probably because I was the only one that was in the States. Because everyone else was overseas. So we couldn't, press charges or file suits against anybody else. Sorry, that was my dog. And so his narrative, he comes out on John Yates's YouTube live. And clear as day, he just starts going and he says, this girl, Shelby Bart. And I remember I'm watching this because someone has messaged me and said, you need to get on, the YouTube. And the second he says my name, I think all the blood just rushed out of my face. And then he proceeds to say, I don't know who this girl is. I've never met her. All of that. And she is stalking me. She is trying to hurt me. She's trying to, taint my reputation. She's posting all these things, blah, whatever. And so that was on April 27th. And in John Yates's live, he says that he's already filed a police report against me and, he's pursuing this.
Was there a police report ever filed?
On April 29th. I'm sorry, he did the live. He did the live with John on April 24th, and on April 29th, he files a police report. So
what did that police report entail?
So I didn't know about it. I didn't know about it until August. I thought I didn't even think anything of it to look into it because I'm he's full of shit. It wasn't until he did the second live doxing me on his own page in August that I said to myself, I thought I was gonna contact the sheriff's department for the police report, and I thought I was gonna prove that he was lying, that there wasn't one. And so I call and I ask, and they tell me it exists. And I request a phone call back from somebody.
What was the report though? Was it a restraining order? Was it saying that you?
No. So the top of the report, it says harassment. And he essentially says that he provides them with my name, he provides them with my Maryland address and no phone number because he has to keep this narrative that he doesn't know who I am. And he says that I was a follower on social media. And then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I start posting all of these private things. Now, he says I posted flight information, communications with his attorney. Never.
Wait, but that doesn't make sense to me. If he doesn't know who you are, then how would you know who his attorney was?
Oh, he says that I hacked into his Gmail. So now I'm a hacker. I'm a stalker. I'm a hacker. And I hacked into.
How would you know he had Gmail if he doesn't know you?
He painted me out to be single white female after him, And so in the first live, it's I don't know who he is, and I'm stalking him, and I'm just out to I'm obsessed with him. And I'm just out to ruin him. And people had remembered me from the beginning of his reign, if you would, being in his lives, being in his comments, being a nasty bitch to anybody that said anything negative about him. And I was nasty. I heard a lot of people. There were a lot of people when this all ended that messaged me and were like, you really fucked me up with what you said to me, and told me about myself. And rightfully so. Looking back on that time, I am mortified at my behavior. But right, so he paints this picture. And so after the live with John, so the police report. So he says I posted all these things about him, and then he goes to say that I mailed him a pair of dirty underwear in the mail. He says that I followed him around town in my car multiple times, that he saw me outside of his fence feeding his dogs through the fence. And then he says, that there was a beer bottle and a bong smashed on his like front driveway, that it, you know, someone threw. He can't definitively say it was me, but just wants to make note of it.
So all of these things were in the police report.
Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to send it to you because I don't have anything to hide. I didn't do any of these things, and I know that. I don't care what anyone thinks.
Okay, but
so,
can I ask a question? Because, you know, I know you've never been on one of my shows before, but I always have questions. I ask a lot of questions. So at the top of the show, you said you moved to Tennessee. Why? Were you
Geoffrey? Okay. I mean, I have a video of him touring the house that I would rent for me because I couldn't see it physically. So he went and saw it for me. So
but did he ask you to move there? Was it like, I learned this the other day. It's, darn it. It's called like future doxing. I wish S4A was here. She told me something like I had never heard of before. I'm going to see if I can find it. But someone who like bigs you up and talks about the future, even though they have no intention of having a future with you. Was it something like that?
Yes. He already knew. Bart was already there.
Okay.
By the time he sent me this video and went and toured that house with me, for me. Okay. So, I mean, that's why at the end I was like so blown away. I mean, I sold my house in Maryland to move to Tennessee. Like, now given I feel like a moron, but at the time it was just awful. It was an awful time. But so after all, and so he goes, sorry, go ahead.
What's the time frame from when you met him and you visited all those times and you were in a relationship with him that you decided to move? Where in that
time? You decided to what?
That you decided to move.
Oh. So March 2020 is when we started talking. I moved February 1st of 2021. It was probably around, like, I guess I visited him in October and we talked about it then. So the seed was like planted then. But it was a huge, thing for me. Like, I owned my home in Baltimore. I was in school, given it was online in Baltimore. It's all I've ever known is Baltimore. I didn't know anybody in Tennessee besides him, Ashley, and Mary. And so, yeah, it was a huge deal. And I will say that I made the decision way too easily to do all this. But I also...
Shelby?
Yeah.
Do you think you were in love with him?
Mm-mm. No, because there was always this, like, I don't know what you want to call it, but there was always this, not like necessarily disconnect. The voice in the back of my head was like always there. And he's not an affectionate guy. He doesn't kiss at all. If you look on the show, if you watch the show, you can notice that as well. That Varia always kissed him, grabbed him and kissed him outside of when they got engaged. Not the kind of guy that, like, if you're laying in bed is going to have you, come over and put your head on his chest. Like, he's just not that kind of guy.
I mean, and I can believe that because, there are men out there. I'll say there are people out there that think that they're the prize, right? So everything has to be about them. And he strikes me as that person. Yeah. I guess, and I don't want to harp on it. I just trying to make sense of it in my mind. So if you weren't in love with him, why would you upheave your life? You owned a home, you were in school, all the things. Why would you move to where he was if you didn't think that you were in love with him and there was a future to be had?
Well, at the time, I don't know if I thought I was in love with him at the time or not. I can tell you looking back, I wasn't. But I was definitely something with him. I mean, it was, I mean, people think this is an excuse, but it was a grooming situation. You know what I mean? For sure. So, yeah, I can't give you a really good excuse for why I did it. I thought it was something. It's that classic thing of he'll change, and when he changes, he'll be he's the perfect guy. That's just this one, couple things. And I've done that in many relationships. So really, this pattern of behavior was not anything really new for me. It was new for me for, I hadn't been that way for many, many years, but yeah, so I can't really give you like this great reason for why I did it.
So knowing everything that you know now, right? Would you do anything differently? And if so, what?
So at the time I messaged him, I did not know anything about him at all.
So when you originally messaged him, and which was a question that I wasn't able to get to in the live chat, people wanted to know like who reached out to who. And I know that in the beginning of our conversation today, you explained that you reached out to him, but it was over something else. You were just like messaging. I get a ton of messages all the time that people are just like something about the show. So it was very much that, right?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I messaged him. It was a simple, hey. I was commenting on a post that he had made, but it was less than 10 minutes before I got a response back, and then it was back and forth. So a lot of people are saying it's not making sense.
Okay, well, not a lot of people. One person is saying it's not making sense. I don't know if that Nicole, hey girl, hey. I'm not sure if you've been with us from the beginning, and I know that we've been on here for quite some hours now, but in the chronological order of this conversation, it is making sense to me. I think the part that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I guess the part I'm trying to wrap my mind around is that you're well-spoken, you're obviously a beautiful woman, and you're a homeowner, successful. The part that I'm trying to wrap my mind around, and I'm not sure if Nicole is thinking this as well, about it not making sense, but from a female perspective, it's just like how we feel about Ellie. Ellie lives in the Pacific Northwest. She's on this season of 90 Day Fiance The Other Way, and she is selling all her stuff, selling her company, and moving across the world for someone who's already cheated on her, someone who has domestic violence abuse in his background as well. And so from a female perspective, we're trying to why would you do that? And so that's why I asked the question, like, did you think you were in love with him? And did you think there was a future with him? And that's why you decided, like, I'm going to uproot my life and my stability in order to possibly have a future with this man. And I think why they're saying that it doesn't make sense is because you said that you weren't in love with them.
Yeah, I mean, there was really never any point where I was like, I love him. All I can say is that, and I said this in a post that I made, is that I have a history of domestic violence, of being in relationships with, violent men. And if I'm not constantly working on myself to keep myself in like fit, mental condition, I can fall right back into that.
I get it.
So again, I'm not making excuses for my behavior, for how I acted towards people. I'm not trying to sit here and be like, well, look, I was a victim in the past. So like, don't talk to me. Don't at me.
No, I understand that. I don't think that that's what you're saying. And I do want to say this, you guys. I think that, and there's research done on it. I don't have the research obviously at hand, but narcissists and abusers, they can, for lack of better terms, sniff out the people that have been through that before. And they try to manipulate that situation. They try to manipulate that person, and familiar recognizes familiar, if that makes any type of sense. So what I'm not about to do everyone is blame anyone, like Shelby specifically. We're not blaming Shelby. She's done no wrong right now. She's telling us and sharing and being open about her experience. If it's not making sense to us, that's why we're asking questions. We're going to try to figure it out. But at the end of the day, it doesn't take away from this being her experience and her truth and her reality. So I do want that to be said, because as you guys know, I'm not into like attacking women. I'm not into any of that stuff. However this lands for you, it's going to land for you. And if it makes sense to you, it makes sense to you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's okay. We're all individuals and we can all have our own opinions of things. And this is her story, period. That being said, is there anything, Shelby, that you want everyone to know that they don't know?
I mean, I want, you know, when everything first happened and he did the first doxing and all that kind of stuff, I had this like gnawing need in me to correct everyone that said something about me and try to prove my point and get it across and send the photos that I have and the evidence that I have and the screenshots that I have. And it was like, it was so important to me because, you know, it was scary, you know, being doxxed by someone, a public figure on this, it's a whole different experience. So I wanted people to know my truth, and I tried every which way.
And I appreciate that about you. And Shelby,
thanks. But at this point, it doesn't matter to me if anyone believes me or not. Like I know the truth. I know that other people in his life know the truth, and they've chosen to lie as well, or lie by omission. And that was very frustrating to me too, because a few of them were women, some were young adults. But at this point, it doesn't matter to me because, like I said, I know my truth. And it's not because I'm sitting here saying, well, like, see everyone, he got convicted and he got found guilty and like he's a scumbag and I feel vindicated. And, you know, I don't at all. I don't think anybody has won in this situation. But I guess I just want people to know that I'm not what he made me out to be.
Yeah.
At all. I'm just not what he made me out to be. And I know there's going to be the people that still don't believe me. I've found that those are 9 times out of 10 the same people that still think he's innocent. So I've kind of gotten to a place where I can deduce that in my mind and like put that in front of me and say, okay, these people still think he's innocent and they think that I am a stalker. Like I don't put weight on that. And I kind of stick with the belief that what other people think of me is none of my business.
And Shelby, I want to jump on what Kathy's saying. Shelby, you're so brave for sharing this. And I do want to say this. First, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for walking with me through this court trial journey. I believe you. And it doesn't matter whether I believe you or anyone else believes you, but I personally want to let you know that I believe you because I see what your story is. And I see how it's interesting to me, you guys, and some of you guys in the live chat as well. It's interesting to me that, and it's breaking my heart. I feel like I'm going to cry, but it's interesting to me that Kristen, you guys, went through the same thing where people didn't believe her. And she stood her ground. And she pushed forward in that and was able to get a conviction. Mary tried to warn us as well. If you guys watch any of her lives, she speaks on her situation and his past wives. From my small knowledge of what's gone on there, these domestic violence allegations and now conviction are not coming out of nowhere. Kristen was not his first victim, and hopefully she's his last victim. But I need you guys to not forget who we're talking about. This man has been convicted of domestic violence. So you can imagine the women that he has been in relationships with, if indeed this is his character, this is the type of person that he is. He's a manipulator. And I don't know if any of you guys know or have known anyone that has dealt with domestic violence. It's all about control. And when Shelby talked about grooming, it is about grooming. And it's I'm going to love bomb you, and I'm going to tell you all the things that are amazing about you. And then I'm going to either pull back, or if it's not about me, or if you're not doing exactly what I want you to do, when I want you to do it, all the things, it comes in various forms. It happens. And this one man has been able to not only manipulate women, and like I said at the top of the show, collect women, and to various degrees. And if I want you guys to sit with this, and we're going to end the show on this, I want you guys to think about someone that's now been convicted of domestic violence. And I want you to think about him always having women, and hoping that someone is going to receive what he's putting out there. And so when Shelby's talking about grooming here, grooming there, grooming there, grooming there, all of those things are true. And I want you guys to refer back to the trial where he tried to change the narrative and tried to make it seem like Kristen was the crazy one. Kristen was the one that was not mentally stable. Kristen was the alcoholic. Kristen was blackout drunk. Same thing can apply to Shelby's story. It's just in a smaller capacity because guess what? They had less time together. And physically at first, they were in different states. So I say all of this to say that this has been so informative. Shelby, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your story and helping me share Kristen's story and Mary's story and everyone that's been affected by this man. I do want to pop this up. Guys, for those of you that are still watching and are watching in the replay, I've spent a lot of time talking about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And, I normally say, support the show, all of this stuff. It would be truly to my heart, you guys, I'm speaking from my heart. I'm trying to raise $2,500 for the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and all proceeds are going to the NCADV. They're the National Coalition about Domestic Violence. If you go to my 90-day The Melanated Way page and donate, that'd be great. 100% of the proceeds are going to them. And I think that it's important that this month that we show all victims support. So again, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I am doing a fundraiser over on my Instagram at 90-day The Melanated Way, and every dollar goes towards supporting and helping domestic violence survivors. And on that note, Shelby, you and I will continue to chat. I just really appreciate you. I know we've taken up hours, but we had so much to get through. You guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see all of you again shortly. Bye for now. And just know, you guys, that, or Shelby, that people are saying thank you for sharing your story. I believe you. I believe Shelby, all the things. So there's that there, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
They're saying stay strong. So I want to say that as well. You guys, thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now.
Bye.